Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of CINE MÁS podcast. Usually, I do these in Spanish, but my guest knows a little bit of Spanish, and I know he's gonna flex when he does. But just for his comfort, it's gonna be in English. Today, I'd like to welcome a very special guest, a person I've known for a number of years. I studied with him. He's a great filmmaker, great human being, a great person, a great friend. Here is Cody Ziglar.
Yo, what's up, man? Thanks for having me. Gracias.
I told you to flex. I told you.
I immediately forgot all the second grade Spanish I learned. But thanks for having me, man. It's so crazy. Like as you were saying your intro, like I realized like we've known each other for like a decade at this point. Like
basically,
it's wild how long we've known each other.
Yeah. So man, what's up? How's it been going? How are you today? Are you good?
I'm good, dude. So I'm in between major writing jobs at the moment. So like I've just been hanging out for the past 4 weeks. Been like really like playing a lot of video games, watching a lot of movies, watching a lot of TV shows. I just rewatched all of the Star Wars films in like chronological order, just because like I haven't seen them in such a long time. And like it's always fun like watching those big like tentpole blockbusters, but also they have like a little bit like whimsy and charm to them. So like I'm good. I'm doing good, man. How about yourself? How are we living over there?
I'm good. Just, hoping there's like a little tropical storm that's kind of been forming. I read that up literally today. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah,
but for now, it's exactly fingers crossed. But for now, it's been chill, man. Just same as you in between jobs. I've been doing a little here and there, editing gigs and stuff, but just been chilling, entering the world of podcasting, as you've seen.
Oh yeah, we love to help you here. Welcome to the podcasting world, my man.
Yeah, it's fun. I will ask you, how much of a Star Wars purist are you? What version of the original trilogy did you see?
When I was a young upstart, I was like all about the no edits. We got to do the original. But now that I'm older, I'm like, you know what? It's most of the bones are still there. Like they're just small things that annoy me a little bit. But like no, like these are for children. Like not in like pejorative sense, but like they're simple myths for kids. So I'm like some like 12-year-old watching this isn't going to care that Lucas added in some digital rocks in front of R2D2 or something like that. So like, you know what, they still mostly hold up. Yeah. I say enjoy them. There's so many bad movies out there that when you even have anything that's just like a B+ that sneaks its way through, it's a miracle, to be honest with you.
You said the rocks, and I think I had a mini rant in another podcast 2 weeks ago about the stupid rock, because he just doesn't fit there, man.
Yeah,
that's the thing that always bothered me when I saw the rock in front of him. He doesn't. I know he can't jimmy himself inside.
Yeah, it's a weird edit. I have no idea why he thought that would add anything to the movie, but it's like whatever. I can't find the original version.
I understand the why. I understand that it comes down to visually showcasing that he's in hiding.
Yeah.
But the original one, like, you can understand that the robot's hiding. I don't understand what this little rock adds to, It's a little bizarre. Let's get into that. Let's dig a bit deeper, because I always found it interesting that that Lucas, first of all, from an authoristic sense, he did direct the first one, which
Yeah.
I can completely understand him trying to, remaster, remix, do fixes to the first one, because whatever.
Hmm.
But let's not kid ourselves. He only, although he's a creator of Star Wars, sure,
Yeah.
we can't take that away from him. He did not direct the second and third one. So
Yeah.
there is some authoristic uh sense, there's like a morality to it, maybe,
Yeah.
where he did touch upon a little bit of the second and third one, especially the third one, because there's like a sequence, like a musical sequence, and
Hmm.
there's some other little fixes here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And technically, he didn't direct it. So, what do
Yeah.
you think from an authoristic morality sense as a director? Like, would you be kind of upset if the writer, which understandably so, he is the creator of this universe and whatever, and you were kind of a paid for hire, but you still put your heart and soul doing this movie? Like, you did
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi. Like, someone shouldn't be able to take that away from you because of it.
Yeah.
What do you think of someone doing that?
It's weird. It's weird. If it was like if they're like guns for hire, which this is such a weird case because like they were like indie movies made and financed by George Lucas. So like I guess at the end of the day he has final say. But like it is, I think it wouldn't be as weird if you could find those original versions. Like if you could find an unupdated like a 1999 whatever it was when we fixed them, like you could find those, would be so much easier. But like since there's no access, it's like it is weird to be like, oh, I would feel some type of way undoubtedly if I like made a thing and then 25 years later someone went in and took out also the original like song in Jabba's palace fucking slaps. Like it's a great song. Like it's a genuine bop. So, and they replaced it with some weird like space blues numbers that doesn't really work. That would kind of get under my skin a little bit, unless I went in knowing that I would have not really any final say in the edit or whatever. Like I'm just doing it for like the prestige or the paycheck or I know what the deal is. If I didn't know that, it would rub me the wrong way a little bit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I always find it a little weird, like in retrospect. The other thing I always found a little concerning, it stems from the fact that we're filmmakers, right? We understand, in a deeper sense, we understand why Lucas did what he did. Because if we could, we would just go back to our previous films and re-edit and restructure and shoot more stuff and be in this never-ending circle of always fixing. But thanks to things like deadlines, we have to finish. And any director worth their salt knows the literal feeling that George Lucas must have felt. So when people critiqued him like, oh, why did he touch up their masterpieces? Because you don't understand, people.
Yeah.
When he's seen those movies, he finds every single mistake he made. But you probably never see them because you see them as these masterpieces, which of course they are. They're amazing films.
Yeah.
But he knows deep down, he's like, God damn it, I wish I didn't do this and that stupid alien, that stupid mask, and this stupid cut. And I wish I could just go back. And that's exactly what he did. He went back and he fixes the mistakes akin to what he thought that needed to be fixed, So in that sense, like, do you comprehend like the plight of George Lucas coming back and fixing them? But do you also think it's the correct thing to do, or should you, as a filmmaker, as an author, eventually kind of like let these things go and just move on?
I mean, it's easier said than done. Being like, this thing is in the ether now, it can be gone. Like if I had the resources to make, like even looking back at like scripts I've written, like I read my first TV script that I wrote like reread like a week or so ago, and I was like, oh boy, this is rough. Like I'm glad that like it went into our showrunner's hands and she did a rewrite, but I was like, oof, there was so many things that I would do differently at this point, and like it's always the curse of like any type of creative outlet. Like a painter's always going to like repaint a writer's always going to rewrite, and like your director always wants to like fix the mistakes, because you know how it is. Like you see, if even like a short film, like if you're cutting a short film, you see that thing in the edit 50, 60, 70, 80 times before it even gets to like a picture lock, like just like a fine cut. So like imagine you're doing a 90-minute, a 2-hour feature that has like however many scenes, however many sequences. Like you're going to see like the guy that steps weird, or like the lady that didn't hit her mark just the right way, or like there is a weird piece of grass that like throws off the aesthetic of the whole shot. So like I get that 100%. And like if at this point, if I was like a billionaire too, I was just like, I'm going to go back and fix Luke had a weird looking lip thing, so I'm going to fix it, or like whatever. Like I can definitely relate, and I cannot say that I wouldn't do it to myself if I had the time and resources to do it.
Yeah, I think the same. I think that I've never gone back and fixed my stuff because I'm always thinking
Mhm.
like it makes sense because I made it during a time in my life where I had a certain level of experience. If I go back and kind of
Mhm.
like reshoot, refix, maybe I would even make it work. So sometimes I just let
Yeah.
it exist. But I know of friends that just out of boredom they've gone back to short films and re-edit them, which is cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool experiment. So I can
Mhm.
give props to that. But they kind of exist as a little pocket of who you were at that time.
Yeah,
So it's also
exactly.
kind of
Yeah.
cool because of that. But I get
Yeah,
you. Like
yeah,
if I had all the resources in the world, I'd be like, screw that. My first
yeah.
feature film, like, it might have won like a lot of awards. Doesn't matter. I think it's crap anyway. So I want to fix it. So I totally get that
Yeah.
pride. The only thing I'd say is like George Lucas, for how aware he is of how technology evolves,
Mhm.
and I know he was probably very impressed with how technology was back in like at least the late 90s when he
Mhm.
did the first special editions and he did
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
trench run sequence where he kind of like sprinkled some CGI into it.
yeah. Mhm.
I think that when he was refixing them later on for the Blu-ray release, I feel like he should have went back and realized, you know what?
Yeah.
The models were better. Maybe I should just rehire some of those people that I worked with back in the day or some
Mhm.
of the new people and do new models and kind of like
Yeah.
remix it because you can't, there's something so tangible and so nice about models.
Yeah, yeah. I
It
mean, it's funny that you say that because I mean, all the new trilogy, like the
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams, Ryan Johnson ones, like they have a great. I mean, obviously, technology's evolved so much further now than it was in like 1973 or whatever. But they have a great mix of like practicality and like CGI. Like, there's a sequence in the Rise of Skywalker where like they blow up a planet and it's very obviously like a model that they shot because the way that it reacted to the explosion, and then they have like a little bit of CGI, just like a nice like some makeup stitched like slabbed over to like make it a little to blend the worlds, and like that's great. Like I think that's a thing that they probably could have done if you wanted to do it. It's one of those things where like once you add in CGI to, this is just my take, CGI to like practical stuff, like it instantly ages it, especially when it's something that's like made in like 1999, before it was like
Mhm.
really, before we had like physics simulations and things could like look good and like look believable, where it's like, oh, this is like very obviously like a weird, it sort of looks like a PS2 graphics that you have like the X-wings open up and like they head toward the Death Star. It ages it a little bit. Like I
Yeah.
I think if he was, I mean, again, also like you just don't have the original versions. Like I think if you had the option to like, oh, I want to watch the original versions in like 1080, like that would be great, but like you can only find them on VHS, and I think it's the scarcity that sort of makes it a little sting a little bit more.
hmm there has been some fan projects. Obviously, you probably heard of them about the
Hmm.
despecialized editions and stuff. Which
Yeah.
it's a great initiative. But I agree with you. There should just be the availability. I
Yeah.
understand that from the sense of being, like the author said that these are my
Hmm.
versions now, so this is my version. So there should be
Hmm.
some level of respect to that. But
Yeah.
I like the idea of choice as a consumer.
Yeah.
I like the idea of
Hmm.
choice. I wish
Yeah.
there was like seven, like all the versions of that have been released over the years of Star Wars, have them all on Disney Plus. Just have them.
Yeah.
And then people
Yeah.
can be like, oh, I feel nostalgic for when they did the first re-release with the
Yeah. Yeah.
1997 one where the X-Men drove. That was
Yeah.
impressive for me when I was a kid. So I want to see
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
version
Yeah.
forever. But some other people are like, no, I want to go back when I was in the 70s and I watched it for the
Mhm.
first time. And I want to see like the pure version.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
even
I
sometimes the director cuts are sometimes even more enjoyable than the original. Like I love
Mhm.
Aliens, but I think James Cameron's director cut of Aliens is so good, and it explains so much more of what's going on, and like you just have more time to sit with the characters. It's not like if you watch the original one, like Ripley wakes up and then she just basically on LV-246, whatever it is, like she instantly
Yeah.
goes to or the base or whatever. Where like the director's cut, like she wakes up, you sit with them, like you meet the board members, like you meet the people that she's hanging out with, you see the people at Hadley's Hope or whatever it's called. It's
Mhm.
I don't know, it really, I think, yeah, again, also I have the option to watch the original if I want to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 7 Blade Runner cuts, and you can see them all.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah,
great. You can see the
yeah,
original trash and then see like the slightly better ones. I don't remember which one
yeah.
I like. I don't remember it's the Final Cut director's cut. There's one that I love
I
more than
think
the other.
director's cut's the one that's like the one that everyone goes to.
Yeah,
That's like, oh, this
exactly.
doesn't
I
have
think
the
that one.
weird voiceover and like the weird outtakes from The Shining stacked over on the end or whatever. Yeah.
Nice. It's a good way of putting it. We
Yeah.
have a little comment saying Alforjias. Hi, hi. Welcome.
Yo,
Welcome to
what's
the
up?
stream. Um Okay, well, let's get started then. So,
Yeah, let's do it.
tell me about your life. How did you get into this world? What made you
Hmm.
inspired to start working in film? And how has that trajectory have been since you started until where you are right now? Go ahead, talk to you about
Yeah,
us.
so I'm from a super small town. I mean, you know this. I'm from North Carolina, super small rural town in North Carolina. Like, but I've always been into like art stuff. Like my dad was like into doing models, and he like drew and did photography. It's like art's always been like around the zeitgeist when I was growing up as a kid. And I was like, oh, I love these things. Like I went during like undergrad, like 2 years in, I was like, I was studying like radio and TV broadcast. I was like, I don't want to fucking work in the news. This shit does not interest me. Like, I want to do something creative. Like, I like playing with the cameras. Like, we had a class where we had to like storyboard out like a scene. I was like, this is super fun. I like this aspect, but like, I don't like shooting like some, oh, there's a dog got out of the pound at the local whatever. I was like, I don't give a shit about that. So like, I decided pretty early on that I was going to go to film school. Like, I landed at SCAD, which is
Mhm.
like, you were there. It's just like a weird art school plugged in the middle of fucking South with like every different type of discipline. Like you have like the textile kids, you have the art kids, you have the painting, the control arts, the filmmakers, the fashion designers, like all these weird eclectic people that are just hanging out of this one space making stuff. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I want. And like I've always been into like comedy and stuff and animation. Like I love Adult Swim, I love anime, I love comic books and all that stuff. So like I mean, you can also attest to that. Like when I came in, like I only wrote comedies. Like I wasn't much of a drama guy. I was like, if I have to feel things besides laughter, like I'm probably not the person that should be writing this or directing it because I'm not going to turn in a very good product. Like I don't want to feel bummed out on set. That's always been like my
Yeah.
mo when I was there. But I ended up getting an internship at Adult Swim, and I studied under these two cats, uh, Dave Willis, who he did Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Squidbillies. We were doing a show called Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell, the second season of that. And the other dude that I was working under was this guy named Casper Kelly. He did Too Many Cooks, like this huge like Adult Swim short that really blew up his career. And I was basically a director's assistant. So like I was there from like beginning to end. Like I was there. When they were writing the scripts, when they were in the writer's room, I was like the guy that was putting together like all the breakdowns for like these are the characters, these are the locations. Like I was at the casting with like, running to get them lunch and stuff. And on set, I was just hanging out as their assistant. I was the director's assistant. And
Mhm.
we shot we did a block shooting. So we did like the first half of the season, which was like 20 days. It ended up being like four episodes. I think it took like a week, 5 days to shoot an episode. And I was just like learning. I got a crash course in comedy. Like which is all the shit that I want to do from people that I liked. And as I was like, before I went back to SCAD, like as my internship was leaving, they were like, I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. What do you guys recommend? How do I get here? They're like, well, you're already here. So like that's done. That first step is done. But
Yeah.
really, if you want to like work in comedy, like you can really only do it in New York or LA. So, like Atlanta is like an outlier. Like this is a very like we're one central place that just
Mhm.
happens to be making comedy. But like those are places you need to go if you want to work in comedy or in the industry in general, honestly. So I landed out here in LA in like 2015, like basically as soon as I graduated, and then ended up getting a job. I worked a bunch of shitty jobs, but like I ended up getting like my first job that was like, oh, this isn't miserable or like the job sucks, but like is the benefits are good. Is that I was working at this place called the Upright Citizens Brigade, aka the UCB. It's like a comedy theater. Basically, any working comedian or writer that you've seen in anything over the past 20 years has come out of that school. Bunch of SNL people, any comedy writer that's on any like TV show, like if you see anyone like you see that they've gone to that place. And
Mhm.
basically, I was in charge of like their equipment. They were doing like digital content, making like internet funny videos, and like I had worked at equipment stuff at SCAD where we had like 1,000 film students. So like I went from 1,000 kids to like 12 comedians. Like I could do that all day, any day with my eyes closed. And basically, what I was doing is like on the weekends I would just shoot shit. I'd shoot shorts. I'd shoot web series. I'd shoot sketches. I'd write stuff with my friends because I had access to the building and we had like a green screen, like a cyc wall. So like I was constantly shooting stuff there and just like writing and developing like what I thought my taste was and like what I thought my sense of humor was. And eventually I ended up producing podcasts for this another comedy company called Earwolf. And through that, it was just dumb luck, dude. Like I had just finished writing a pilot. Like I had gotten a manager like a couple of years earlier. And he was like, you really, if you want to like get into like filmmaking, like writing and directing, like you need to like have like an actual like pilot sample written. So like I had just finished the pilot sample And basically, one of the shows that I was producing, our host, one of our hosts, this lady named Tawny Newsom, shout out to Tawny, she's great. She had booked this Netflix show called Space Force, and basically she was going to be gone for like 2 months. She's like, I got to go shoot in the desert with Steve Carell, so you guys need to find a
Yeah.
temporary co-host. And our other host, Andrew, was like, he's like, I don't feel like looking for people. Do you want to just like come in and co-host for a couple times? I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm already producing it. It's easy for me to do this. And basically, I stepped in, and like a couple days later, Andrew was like, "Hey, do you have like a sample that you can send me? Someone wants to see it, but I can't tell you who." I was like, oh, "Yeah, sure, fine, whatever." I sent it to him. I didn't hear anything back for like a couple of weeks, but in the meantime, a friend had recommended me for this show called Craig of the Creek, this animated show on Cartoon Network. I basically got a writing job for that. I was freelancing, so I'd go in like 2 or 3 times a week for 2 or 3 hours. It was written with a bunch. It's like so there are like board driven shows and script driven shows, and basically the difference is like board driven means that the storyboard artists do the actual like writing, like the dialogue and stuff, and like they get their scripts, their ideas for stories through outline. So like writers will like we'll break a story together, and it's usually like the actual like just writers, like the physical writers, like the storyboard artist, and like the showrunner. So like we would break stuff, like develop the idea, like distill the idea out, and then they would give one out. So I was assigned an episode. I'd go write like a 4-page outline in like a Google Doc, give it to the artist, and then they would like expand on that and like write their actual strip.
It's
So I was doing
interesting.
that. Yeah, it's a really cool, a really really fun collaborative process. Like I
But
loved it
that
because
that's
like
interesting. That is the storyboard. Why is it the storyboard is the ones that are kind of like building the story? Because is
I
it
think it's
because they
because they're
have because they're building the scenes as it is as well?
yeah, I mean
Or
they're basically it's just a weird way of saying that they're also writers, like they're literally writing the
Mhm.
dialogue and stuff, but like they're like drawing the episode, so like they're the ones that's giving the flow. Like you're just giving them basically a blueprint with the outline. You're like
Yeah.
this is like the basic stuff that's happening. Like I'll throw in jokes in mine for dialogue. So like, hey, this is a joke that I think this character would make. Blah blah blah, and then like they take it and they really bring it to life. It's like they write
That's cool.
and draw like 11-minute episode. It's crazy. And it's really cool just like collaborating with people like that. But so I
Mhm.
was doing that, and I got basically they like, hey, they offered me like, hey, do you want to be like a staff writer for the show? I was like, yeah, sure, great, I would love to. Like I love the show. I get to like this is like my first like real writing job. And basically I accepted it on a Monday. That Wednesday I got a call from my manager being like, hey, Marvel wants to meet with you. I was like, they want to meet with me? Why would they want to meet with me? They're like, I don't know, but you guess you can go figure it out. um, and as I walk in the interview, I meet this lady, the showrunner, Jessica Gao. And so, like, what had happened was she had heard me on this podcast that I had guested on. She was really good friends with the host, well, both the hosts, with Andrew. And she was like, hey, I heard Zig on there. I thought he was funny. Does he have like a sample that you could send me? And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll ask him. And he sent it to her. And then she's like, all right, here's the deal. Like, I'm going to be show running, head writing She-Hulk as part of the new slate of like MCU shows, like with Loki and What If and WandaVision, basically all these new Marvel shows that are going to be playing on Disney Plus. Is like, we liked your sample and like we want you to come on board. I was like, great. So like I had that interview Wednesday. Friday I put in my 1 day's notice at Craig of the Creek, and then I started writing for She-Hulk, and like that was like my first foray into like what I think people consider like writing, where it's like the writer is writing the scripts, like it's a script driven show. Like you're in a room with like 9 other writers. You have like the whiteboards fucking everywhere. You're breaking stories, like we breaking like episodes and stuff, and like everyone was like pitching in, and like you're finding your footing and finding your voice, and that's what like led to everything else. Like I went from that to Robot Chicken, like a sketch comedy show on Adult Swim. I got that because once again, Jessica Gao, she had written on that show before, and she recommended me. The way that writer rooms, I don't want to get too into the weeds because I don't want to confuse one, but like the way that writers rooms are set up is that basically you have your head writer, your showrunner. They're the ones that are like overseeing everything. So like you turn in your script, no matter what it is, it goes to them, and like they're the ones that's gonna like punch it up and like before it gets to air. But they also have a number two. It's called like a strong number two. That's like their second in command, basically. That's like their first mate if you're on a ship. And like her number two was this dude named Zeb Wells, who had written for Robot Chicken for like ever. He had a show, the production company Stupid Buddy that makes Robot Chicken, had also made a show of his called super mansions. Like he had been there.
Oh, yeah.
Like he just so they recommended me for Robot Chicken, and also like Zeb and I's roles in She-Hulk were like the Marvel nerds. Like we were like the comic book guys. Like we were the like Zeb has also been writing comics for fucking ever. So like we were there was a point where like we were talking about a character like no one knew how their powers moved, and like I literally pulled out the comic book from my backpack and like waved it in the room, and they're like, calm down, that's really great that you have that, but we're gonna need you to like chill out just a little bit. It's like that's where I was coming from. So like
Yeah.
I went from She-Hulk to Robot Chicken. I got into like writing comic books from Zeb. Like he introduced me to like the people on like Marvel comic side. And that's how I wrote like my Miles Morales, my first character, like my first comic book. I went from that to like a short, and now I'm writing Amazing Spider-Man. And basically how I got Rick and Morty, which was like my last writing job, is that there's a dude named Jeff Loveness. He wrote the new Ant-Man movie, Ant-Man 3. He was also wrote for Rick and Morty. And basically what had happened was like when all those new like Disney Plus Marvel shows got announced in like 2019 and people started getting jobs there, we all had like mixers and stuff, like meeting this new crop of like, these are the next generation of like, Marvel writers. And like we never physically met, but we all followed each other on Twitter or social media and stuff. And we were always like liking each other's posts or like liking jokes, or like he would like message me and be like, hey, if you have any, because he's also a comic writer, like if you have any questions or want to get into comic writing, let me know. I'm always I'm basically like I'm an open door. I'm here to help out anyone that I can. And he recommended me for Rick and Morty. He was like in December, he hit me up. He was like, hey, I'm going to be going to London to shoot Ant-Man 3, flexing on me. Do you want to submit for Rick and Morty? I was like, of course. I love Pickle Rick. I love Rick and Morty. And like that's how I got the job. So like this is all one. This is to bring us where we're currently at now. That's basically one long-winded way of me saying that everything has just been basically making friends, and networking is the thing that everyone fucking hates to hear
But it's the
in
truth.
film school.
There's
But
no lie.
yeah, and it's not like I don't know how you feel the same way, but like when I used to hear that, I was like, oh, it means like, oh, you want to go talk business? We're gonna go downtown and drink wine and blah blah blah. It feels like very scummy, but really it's just like you're just making friends. Like, you and I are friends. Like that's how it is. Like basically all it is. So like it's not like you want to go out there being like, how can this person benefit me? How can they make me get where I want to get? It's basically like, do I get along with this person? Do I think that they're cool? Like, can I help them out, and can they help me in ways that are like not just like for my benefit, because you want to see that person prosperous. Like, a rising tide lifts all ships is like really the mentality. Like that's the note behind the note of like being like networking. So like that's really all it is. Like I just made a bunch of friends. It's not like they instantly paid off. Like I made friends my first year out here in like LA that like, then 3 or 4 years later, they're like, oh, they're the people that are like getting writing jobs and helping me out and stuff. And like, that's basically like, that's like a long way of basically catching everyone to like where I'm at now. So like writing comic books, still doing some podcast producing or podcast hosting and stuff, and like writing TV. And it's only here because I'm good at making friends, and like I like nerd shit, and I happen to be okay at writing it.
That's beautiful. Like it's true, yeah. Like everyone that's in the business, and that goes beyond like film. It goes to art. You just meet
anything.
these people, and like you said, it's not like in a scummy way. Because when you hear it the first time, you're like, oh, I have to, wine and dine. I have to get drunk with these people, to get around. It's like, no, you're just meeting cool people, and if they like you, if it's a genuine thing, they're going to remember, be like, oh, fuck, I remember Cody like 2 years ago. We hung out once and he's pretty cool. And I remember he like showed me a stupid comic book. So I think he'd be kind of cool for something. Like,
that's exactly
check out what
it
he's
is.
doing. Yeah, that's
like,
literally what
you're
it
going to
is.
be like, it's like if you're going to be stuck on set with someone for like 15, 16 hours, like you want them to be cool. And it's the same way in a writer's room with like pre-pandemic when like we were in person. Like if you're going to be in a room with someone for 8 hours and like you have to like really expose yourself, not in like some people like will tell like heart-wrenching stories, but really it's like if like telling jokes in front of people is hard shit, especially when you're like in a room with 8 people. You're basically saying, this is what I think is funny, this is a distilled down version of what my personality is, and like I'm going to blurt it out yet loud because I think that's good enough to like get put into an episode that a bunch of people are going to show up on set. Actors are going to say the line. Fucking carpenters are going to put fucking nail to wood and build a set. There's going to be a lady with fucking green face paint to be She-Hulk at some point. Like, I think the thing that I'm saying out loud is going to be good enough for some actress to say, in front of people that people are going to watch on their TV screen. Like that's a very vulnerable thing. So like, you know, you really have to like trust people and like you want to be around them and you want to be encouraging because like no one wants to like eat shit in front of like, you know,
Yeah.
8 other people. I mean, no one did that because like it's a very nice room, but you know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
you got to have that trust and like you want to be around someone that you can like and trust for like 8 hours a day for like 6 months or 20 weeks, however long the contract was for the show. And like it's the exact same way with any art form, I'd imagine, outside of like just filmmaking. Like you want to be around people that you like because they're also a reflection of you. You're like, oh, I'm a good person. They're a good person. Like it's nice being around people that like sort of
Mhm.
have the same pH balance.
Yeah, of course, and it's all about helping each other out. Because in
Yeah.
the end, man, you just want everyone to just move up, you know, and everyone do stuff. And I love that because I always do the same thing. I was like, if I like working on something, I get like a little side job. I'm like, I can't do it, but I remember
Yeah.
2 of my friends.
Mhm.
They're like probably not doing much right now. Hey, buddy, what are you up to? Hey, bro, I
Yeah.
got like a job for you. Oh, it's cool, man.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's just we're all
Exactly.
helping each other out, and that's just
Yeah.
part of it. And it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing, you know. Like regardless, it's a beautiful thing to kind of like be able to help each other out, to boost each other
Mhm.
up, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So before we get kind of like into the nitty gritty of the writing stuff, let's
Mhm.
talk about like how we kind of met. Because I'm going to
Yeah.
give you my perspective.
Yeah.
And it's
Hit me.
all thanks to
Let's-
Ruby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ruby, I'm sorry,
Rodriguez.
Ruby. Thank you, Ruby.
Yeah.
Because she was literally the only person I knew when I got to Savannah. Because
Yeah.
I knew her a little bit from when I was in Puerto Rico. I didn't know her that well, but I knew her a
Mhm.
little bit. So she
Yeah.
was like my gateway into everybody. But my problem was that when I got into SCAD, I aced my basic courses. So
Mhm.
I was never in like the group where you were in.
Yeah.
Like Ruby was taking like the very basic courses, but I think I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was my GPA or the resume
Mhm.
or whatever it was, because I don't know what the parameters are. But they deemed it that I knew enough for me not to take the 3 base courses. I had to take the first trimester. So they bumped me to other stuff. That's how I met like Sydney, and I met other people.
Mhm.
And I met like a
Yeah.
bunch of writers at first because I was taking like
Yeah.
actual, like not actual, but you know, like the next level writing courses. So that's where I met like a lot of theater writers and like other people like
Yeah.
that. So I was hanging out with a lot of writers, but I was telling Ruby, I need to like those people are cool, but I need to meet like film people because
Yeah.
I'm not a writer, and I know I'm not a writer. I'll take my
Yeah.
writing courses, but I'm sucky like that. And then she was like, "Oh, just hang out with me." Like we hung out. Like I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure I got drunk the first time we hung out. I'm pretty
I
sure I
feel
got
like
pretty wasted.
Yeah, I feel like
So
that's
you
how
know,
that's. I mean, we were in art school, and like
yeah.
it was a city that had an open drinking policy, so like you could
Oh
just
yeah.
like walk around drinking. So like, I don't remember the first time we met, but I remember distinctively. So we had in, in film school we
Go
had
ahead. Go ahead.
we had a so me and like 3 other dudes had this. A nice apartment, this nice, basically a house that we found in the middle of nowhere called Narnia, and we would have parties there pretty regularly. And like my first distinct memory of Alejandro is like we were on my balcony with like 4 other people, drunk as fuck. Just I remember like I was talking very bad Spanish, and like we were just talking shit about some movie or some bullshit like that. And I was like, oh, I like this guy. Like we had the same taste when it comes to like critiquing film and what
Yeah.
the shit that we're into.
Yeah. It was beautiful. Yeah, it was like, and I love your apartment. It was like, it was a cool little spot, guys. Like
I know, dude.
aesthetically, like I don't know if you. I know I used it because I remember. Crap, I
Did you shoot
remember
something in
that
there?
I did a shoot there. I did a little
Oh
short
yeah,
with Crap, I
Andy,
forgot his name. It wasn't Andy. Go ahead, keep
Charles,
going. It
Tristan,
wasn't. It wasn't Tristan. It is. You're missing the
Charles,
other.
Charles,
No, no.
Kyle.
Kyle. Yeah, it was Kyle. It was
Yeah,
Kyle. It was
yeah,
Kyle
yeah,
Drew.
yeah,
Kyle Drew.
yeah,
Yeah. We
yeah, yeah,
made like
yeah.
a little music video with the song
Oh
that's
yeah, I remember
yeah,
that.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's at
yeah,
the beginning of the movie Comedy, which is a very
yeah,
obscure and not comedy. But
yeah.
the comedy, yeah, that's we there at the beginning of the movie, the comedy, there's a little music segment, and it's a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
fucking song. And I
Yeah,
was like, Kyle, we gotta like make a music video with this fucking song. And he heard it, he's
yeah,
like, this shit's dope. And then we just like
yeah,
collabed on it and stuff. And we used like a little, I think we used your balcony and probably
yeah.
something else from the apartment because I love the aesthetics of that fucking apartment.
Yeah, it was such a cool. So we
So
called it Narnia because it was like this fucking beautiful spot in the middle of
mhm,
nowhere. Like it was just like
yeah.
we're in between like a shitty dive bar and like another shitty dive bar. But the inside, it was a house that had to be built in like the 1920s that they like literally
Mhm.
lifted up off the ground
Yeah.
1 story. It was a
Yeah, it
fucking
was
great
beautiful.
spot to be a weird art kid in for 3 years.
Mhm. Yeah, that was it was a beautiful spot. Like that's why I dug it so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really fun. I remember that you made this short called, I think it was The Struggle of Tyson Jones. When I
Yeah.
saw that short, I flipped my shit. I showed it to everyone at home. I was like, dude, there's this guy who made this like 4 minute short. There's
Thank
not
you.
like a story. It's just this dude existing. It's like it's
Yeah,
like
just a
the
slice.
struggle, dude.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like I showed it to everyone. It was like, everyone laughed their asses off. They're like, what the fuck is this character? He's so fucking crazy. And then you have like the boom dude, like he's getting drugs from the guy. And then
Yeah.
he's like running off every other scene. He's like their hipster kid who runs off scene. It's
Yeah,
so fucking hilarious. And I remember that you wanted to make like a sequel. And I was like,
yeah.
like Cody, like I want to
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
want to
yeah,
work
yeah.
on that shit. I don't care what I'll do. I'll do whatever you want, man. I just want to be on set because that shit was so fun. And it was like a 1 day shoot, I think.
Oh yeah, well, those things were
And
all 1 hour.
yeah,
They were 1 day, 4 hours. Like we were like, this is mostly this is like it looks like it's improvised, but like it's
oh
like
yeah,
it's basically like for those most people don't know. Basically, it's like one of those like a mockumentary style with like we have an interview that they say something and then it's undercut by a joke of them doing whatever they actually did in the real moment. Like that's
mm-hmm.
basically what the short was. And you did audio for us, right? Is
Yeah.
that what you're? Yeah, I thought. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. It was a fun day. Like it was super cool. Like, and the actor, that's Christian Noble, which
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
actually saw because I was watching the Underground Railroad. He's
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
the railroad man basically.
yeah,
I was like, oh my god, that's so fucking amazing. He's working
yeah,
with Barry Jenkins. He's
yeah.
so
That's so
fucking. Oh,
dope.
you fucking envy him.
Yeah.
And I think Emily, because I talked to Emily like a few months back.
Mhm.
She worked on that in the show too, and she was working on the Powerpuff Girls one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and she told me like how bad it went because apparently the pilot was kind of horrible. They've done the pilot
Yeah,
like 3 times over already.
yeah,
And she
yeah,
told me
yeah.
like the first iteration that she was like, when I read the script and when I saw the actresses, I was like, this shit ain't gonna fly. It's like, oh, that bad, huh?
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah,
yeah, I instantly knew, but I read with it because it's a job. And I'm like, I get you.
yeah, yeah,
But I
yeah.
was like, I hate that you work with Barry Jenkins. She's like, he's such a genius. And I'm like, yeah, keep rubbing it in. I get it. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. But it was so cool watching him there. And it was so cool that character you crafted. And when I saw that, I'm
Oh,
like,
thanks.
Cody's going to make amazing, funny shit. I just
Thanks,
know it,
man.
man. I don't know where he's going to make the funny shit, but he's going to make the funny shit. I know it.
Thanks, dude. I mean, that was
So,
like I think I wrote that with my buddy Tristan Hill. Like we co-directed that together, and like that was I think that was like a class project that we did, and like out of all the things that we made there, like including like our thesis and shit, like that's the one that people still like. That's one they'll actually send out for like jobs and shit. Like if I ever met for like directing jobs, like I'll send it like, hey, this is what we made this for like $75 or like whatever like lunch cost. And how much it costs to buy a fucking elephant suit off of Amazon Prime, but like we lucked out. It was a fun shoot. Christian was a great actor. Also, we literally just pulled a crew to like be in the shot. Like there's like the guy that the boom op that was buying drugs, who's like a real boom op. The second AC that's like pointing to him that like rats him out like he's buying drugs. Like Kyle Drew, our actual second AC. It was a fun shoot. Like that to me is like what I miss most about SCAD, where it's like, or even just film school in general. Like you'd grab 3 of your closest friends and then you'd go make a thing and maybe fucking trash, maybe terrible, but like you made a thing and like you fucking forge the fires of your friendship on fucking set. And like I miss that, dude. Like I miss like driving 45 minutes to bumfuck nowhere to like help my friend help grip. I'm gonna like fucking rig light. I don't know shit about electronics or lighting, but like I'm gonna go fucking haul a 650 up a flight of stairs or whatever because my friend wants to make a thing that they really believe in.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the best part because the passion's there because there's no money. So if you're there, it's because you believe in your friend or you believe in the project or you believe in the script. And you might not know those people, but you believe in something there because you're there for someone. So there's this element of like, as long as you're fed and as long as you're drinking water, you'll manage because it's all about the art. And I get it because you want to get paid. That's obviously your end goal. But sometimes you're starting out or sometimes you just believe in the project enough where you're like, I'm willing to forgo pay because I truly believe in what's happening here. And it's kind of sweet, not like in a sense of like, screw you, you're not going to pay. It's in the sense of like, you guys are crafting something out of like sheer love because there's literally nothing else involved. So there's that extra effort because you want to make sure that work was for naught. since you're foregoing
Yeah.
like a pay, you're like, I gotta make sure that I'm putting my stamp here, even if I'm like the moon guy. You know what I mean? Like, I want to make sure I got a really good job because I truly believe in what's happening here. And I've had that happen even after film school, because there's a lot of projects that sometimes there's no pay, and there's some friends that just want to get their short films
when I got out
out.
here. First thing I did when I got here was like, I just help my friends make shit. Like that's all. I mean,
exactly.
that's just in the DNA. That's part.
Oh yeah, of course.
Part of it.
Yeah, it happens to me too. Like a lot of my friends, I have this like a film how you call it, like not a studio. It's more like a film collective. I have a film collective called Producciones Tabaquero. Tabaquero is based on like tobacco, the people who make tobacco. So the philosophy, like the arts of philosophy, is that that the people who make the tobacco make them by hand. Like always, it's not like a machine produced. It's like hand. So there's special care and attention to every single cig that you make.
Yep.
So the philosophy that we have is like everything we do with care, and like slowly we kind of like weave it together with care and love. That's like the artsy take. The real take was that my DP was drunk, and he's always smoking tobacco when he's drunk, and he always smelled like tobacco on set. So it was the joke that like we should just like call it something tobacco related. And we were drunk one night. And it's like, what if we call it Producciones Tabaquero? And he's like, we were like looking at him like, fuck yeah, that's great.
That's a great name, yeah.
But we need like a better reason. We can't just say that shit in film festivals. So we came up with like the thing I told you, because that's
it's a great spiel,
you fake it till you make it, bro. That's how you do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, give me 1 second. Fabiola Martinez del Valle says hi. Thank you for being here. But yeah, man. So like, I totally get you in that aspect. Like, my last short film, I got into very prestigious, Puerto Rico's very prestigious film festival called Festival de Cine Europeo, where it's basically this collective in San Juan where they teach people French, and it's like La Alianza Francesa is Alliance Franche, which they have a lot of subdivisions in, I think, Latin America, and I think in the United States as well, where it's like a nonprofit collective that teaches people how to speak French. Oh, cool. So they also have a subsection, at least in Puerto Rico they do, where they have like a film festival, and they also have a subsection where they allow up-and-coming filmmakers. Technically I'm up-and-coming here yet, because I haven't made an actual feature film, so technically I'm still up-and-coming. They made a subsection where they invite emerging filmmakers, Puerto Rican filmmakers, to make a film. Like, it's self-produced, but they give you a lot of like expensive equipment, like Arri Alexas, like expensive boom lights, whatever. Perfect. And I got in because of recommendations from friends, and because they've seen my previous work. So I'm like, oh my God, I got super excited because I submitted it because I went to Oaxaca with another film that I edited, and my bro, he directed. It was a documentary about this up-and-coming rapper in Puerto Rico. We got to like the Oaxaca Film Festival. We're like really excited because Oaxaca is kind of prestige. So we went there, and I was super depressed the whole way through because I never got like the email callback sort of. And then I was like depressed. Then I went like the airplane ride home. I was in Puerto Rico, like grabbing my bags, and I got like a text from a friend, like a producer friend. He's like, bro, did you get like the email? I'm like, are you flexing on me, bro? Because I didn't get shit. Like, don't flex on me because I'm kind of depressed right now. I was like, the fuck you're talking about? Like, you got in. You're like, whoa, what? I'll be waiting for like 7 days. And I checked. It was in my stupid spam folder, bro. I was so fucking upset. So upset. So I got the email. I went to the meetings. I punched up my script. Basically, my story is about like this super toxic dude, bro, who's on like social media, and he wants to become like an actor, but he's always been like a background actor dude. But now he's got like this big gig because like Spielberg is coming to make a film in Puerto Rico, and he got like an actual SAG-worthy background job. So he's super excited. So he like rents out an Airbnb, and he like goes nuts. He gets super shit-faced, and he's like calling people, bragging about the fact that he got the job. And the irony, he didn't get shit. So he's like having this introspection of like life and how he fucked up, because it kind of like it first starts off kind of funny, but then it gets just pathetic and then dramatic, and that's kind of like how it went with the character. It's basically a little chamber drama. It's mostly him alone, like as if you're watching the film Lock or Buried with Ryan Reynolds, where it's basically just one actor, one location type of deal. Because it was like the cheapest thing to kind of do. And I just let the actor go nuts because I kind of have
Heck
like that dynamic where I'm not. I know you're probably very like enamored with having your scripts kind of being laid out on screen, but I'm a little more loose with scripts. I'm like, I see the script, I use it as type of guideline, but I let my actors kind of like see it, and if like they want to like restructure just a tiny bit or something, I am happy with that. Also, it's funny because I had the screenwriter like there helping me AC and being just generally there. He used to get upset at me doing that shit. Now he's like, I get you. It's your style. Just please don't destroy all my beautiful words. And I'm like, I won't. I'll be there when you really want the actor to say something for real. You can just come up and be like, dude, just please don't destroy my beautiful words in this scene. I'm like, okay, got it. I won't. And then we'll just, work like that because that's a beautiful thing. It's collabing.
That's part of the beauty of it.
In that aspect. It was a fun shoot. Then the pandemic struck, so I never got to show it like in a movie theater. We did like a digital film festival. I was so sad. And I'm just kind of waiting a little bit to see how the film festivals kind of move now, so I can start submitting again. Because I feel like I did like a really good project, and I feel like
you
it's
want people
worth
to see it, dude.
Yeah, exactly. I just want people to see it. So that's like the next step right now. So that's the last big thing I did. I literally did it 2 months prior to the pandemic. So it was like last year.
Oh, bummer. Yeah.
So
I've been a little like, it sounds
great.
It sounds exactly what. Yeah, send it to me too. I like to see it.
Behind scenes. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So let's. Oh shoot. William Andres Rodriguez says, "Why, hello there." Oh yeah, I get your reference. I see you. I get you. Okay, so let's start talking about what is kind of like the difference. Let's start off with Craig of the Creek, since that was your first big job.
Yeah.
What would you say were differences between being like a general screenwriter working on a project or working like for like a long feature film versus being like a freelancer working in this dynamic that you're calling like the screen, what do you say, storyboard writing?
So that was a board driven show. So like
board driven show. So what would be kind of like the differences that you kind of like saw when you start working there? It's like, whoa, this dynamic's so different. Like how do you manage? What are the differences? Go ahead.
I mean, first of all, like I was just super nervous because it's like my first TV writing job, being like, oh, people are going to like watch this. Like this is a popular show, but like, the coolest thing was it's just like collaboration. Like the room was so warm. It's a show about like a black kid who like goes to the creek and hangs out with other kids, and like it's a very diverse cast because everyone behind the scenes is diverse too, and like it doesn't cover just like one type of blackness. There's like Latinx black people, there's like Filipino black people, there's like Southern black people, there's like Northern black people, there's like there's like we have like non-binary characters, we have trans characters, we have like there's just a whole different types of like representation there because people behind the scenes that informs them as well. So like that was the first thing. Second, like not that it wasn't easy because like it's hard work that you're doing, but like because you're just writing outlines, like the pressure is off is because you don't have to write a full script really. Like you're really just like you're writing like this is the general shape and beat of what an episode feels like, and like that takes the pressure off because one, like you don't have to stress about like jokes, like these are like really rough pitches that you're doing, and also like deadlines, like you just have to have a thing turned in on time as opposed to like writing for yourself. You can like, oh, I'll get to it next week, or like I need some time off from this idea because I don't want to get stale, so like I'll sit on it for a couple of months. But it's like, yo, can you have this to us by Thursday? You're like, yeah, I have to, because if not, I'm not going to be here Thursday. Like they're going to find someone else to come and replace me. Like you have to get it done. But also like it was like I said, the crew was so cool and so collaborative that like it didn't feel like work in the sense that like you were really struggling, because like you're like you'd pitch like the first episode that I wrote for them, or like the first story by that I got for them, was this episode called The King of Camping. And basically the way that room works, or a lot of rooms, but they're like, hey, we're on season 3, and like for this season they were doing things by like the seasons of the year. So like we're going to do like a block of fall episodes, a block of spring episodes, a block of some summer themed episodes, a block of winter themed episodes. And they're like, what are some like fall ideas? What is some like things that swirl around? And like, the room starts popping off like, fishing, or leaves, or like camping. And like, oh, camping sounds fun. Like it's like a family centric stuff. And like we can bring some characters into everything like that. And so like I just started talking about like I'm from the South, and like I was like my parents are both super rural, and like I just told a story about how my dad used to him and my uncles and aunts would have to like basically dig out the side of hills to like make their own water, and like basically what that whole process was. And they're like, oh wow, that's really cool, that's interesting. And I was like, yeah. They're like, do you want to like write an episode about that? I was like, yeah, sure. Like it's easy to pull from, because like my dad told me that fucking story all the time when I talked to him. So like that was it. So like that was like, it was really cool and really inviting, because you get to put like a part of like your culture in there. So like if you're Alejandro and you were talking about like, you know, being Puerto Rican, like you could be like, oh, that's a perspective that's interesting. Like what about, you know, what do you want to bring and what can you offer? And like that was like a really inviting aspect of that room. And also it just gets you into the mindset of like writing. Is I've been looking at like my writing journey has been like very small baby steps that lead up to things, with like, you know, you do maybe 2 or 3 revisions for your outline, and then you're sort of like done, like you're sort of off to the races. And with like She-Hulk, you know, the outline. So it's Cricket Week outlines are like 4 pages. Like that's really like the as long as you want to get. She-Hulk, you know, the outlines are 8 pages, because it's a half-hour TV show. You're dealing with a lot more. Like you're actually scripting it. So like, you know, you can have tip dialogue, but like you really want to get the feel for like what's happening in each scene. And also because it's, you know, 30 minutes or whatever, like you have A stories and B stories and sometimes C stories. So like you have 3 different things juggling on. So like you're documenting all that. And then like you get notes on that outline, you do another one, you get your script. Because it's WGA, you know, you get like, you know, 2 rounds of notes. So like you don't have to like slave yourself over it. Like you do your first pass, you get notes from your showrunner and the executives, do your other pass, you turn it in, and then it's basically in the showrunner's hands or Kevin Feige's hand, and then like they can like deal with the stress of it. So like that was like just a great increment, a great like, you know, you could feel yourself leveling up and putting in the experience points as you do it. And like with Robot Chicken, because the show's like 11 minutes. For those who don't know, Robot Chicken is a sketch show that is, the pace is insane. Like it's 11 minutes, it's a quarter-hour show, but most it's compiled of like sketches, and most sketches are about 35 to 45 seconds. Like the longer ones can be like maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, but really you churn out so much. So like, you know, the first day they're like, all right, today your assignment is like, you guys basically you meet at the morning, you sign into the Zoom at like 9:30, and then like you sort of shoot, it's a writer room, so like you shoot the shit for 30 minutes just bullshitting about whatever, telling dumb jokes, and they're like, all right, cool, we'll see you guys at 4 o'clock. And they shoot, you go off, and basically your quota would be like 2 to 4 sketches a day. And then they have things called channel flips, which are just basically one, which like you're saying, like one location, no cuts, basically like a punchline. It's just like a joke. You set something up and then you tell it in like maybe 10 seconds if you're like that. That's about as long as you can get. So like you do 2 to 4 sketches and then 10 channel flips, and like at that point you're just like, oh, I just have to put something out. It doesn't have to be good, but I just have to get in the mindset like I need to hit a quota by the end of the day to like get my pages in or whatever. So like that just like sort of primed me to like just be able to write. Like it may not be good, yeah, just get the shit in. Like it may be trash, because you all vote all yes or no at the end of the day too, which is very fun to be like, hey, that thing that you wrote on the toilet on your notes app, it didn't get in. Like I can't believe that didn't get in. I can't believe,
it's so surprising.
yeah, I can't believe my Transformers pitch didn't get in or whatever. But like, you know, like that's the process, and like it just gets you into the mood of like writing, constantly generating ideas and like throwing shit at the wall. And with Rick and Morty, like that show was like notorious. Like Dan Harmon's a notorious rewriter. Like you chug through so many fucking revisions. Like I did like maybe 8 or 9 revisions for my episode. Damn. At a certain point, you're just like, oh, this is just the work that I have to do, and like not in a bad way, but you just like, all right, I need to like get in the mindset of being like, I'm going to write a thing, and like I can just go back and like add in the notes like that and that. And I think because I had done Robot Chicken and She-Hulk and Cricket Creek before that, like I was just in the mind to be like, oh, I can turn around notes for this episode in like a day and a half, and then just have a new version done. Oh, I need to do more revisions for that. Great, cool. We'll break it and we'll do it again. And like, a nice thing about that is like for television, like, you know, you're at that pace where like you're turning in like, you know, 30, 35, 38 page scripts for like half hour or whatever. And with comic books, you know, 20 pages, that's how long an extended issued comic book is. 20 pages, that's all you have to fill. And because it's illustrated, you know, you can get away with certain things where like they have things called like splash pages, which is just like one image on like one page, or like the double spread, which is like an image across 2 pages. So really, you really only have to write 16 to 17 pages of a comic book, which is like, it's great. you
Yeah.
know. It's so like that process has been cool, and the thing that I like most about it is that it's so close to like animation with like Craig of the Creek, or even, you know, even Rick and Morty is like, you know, you write it, you get thumbnails, which are like just individual still drawings, then you get animatics, and then you get like, you know, color passes and sound and all that stuff. But like with it's sort of a very close thing to like with comic books. So like you turn in your script, you know, you get your notes, whatever, you turn them around, and then you start getting like layouts, which is just like rough like circle sketches. I mean, because they're actual artists, they look fantastic, they look better than anything that I could ever draw. But like
Yeah.
they're really like very rudimentary impressionistic ideas of like what is happening. Like you're basically looking at storyboards for like what's happening for your issue.
Mhm.
And then like you give notes on that, you get back like the pencils, which is just like the high quality, actually what the art's sort of going to look like. You know, they may change, you know, like mouth expressions or like how the face looks or like a couple of action, but it's like it's sort of getting there. It's sort of like the assembly cut of like what, you know, what's going to be made. And then you get in the inks, which is like, oh shit, I'm looking at a comic book. Like it's like looking at like a black and white, you know, it's like watching a black and white movie. It's great. And then you get the colors, and then finally you get the actual script pass with like, you know, your bubbles and stuff. And that's when like your editor will go in and be like, all right, because you know, just for instance, like, you know, we read left to right, so like it'd be weird to have, you know, a character speaking with the bubble on this side, because like our Western minds just makes it more confused. It's like, you know, left, right, left, all that shit that we had to fucking yell
Yeah.
about forever in film school, all that stuff. And like, or maybe that's the time when you're like, you know what, I sort of scripted this out this way, but like now that I see the art and the color, like it feels weird. So like I'm gonna go and like rewrite and all that stuff. And then you turn it in, and then you know, 30 days later it's off the prints, and then you have like your own comic book in your hand. And it's like
That's beautiful, man.
it's a beautiful thing, because like it's, you get to be there from start to finish. And because it's not television, like the timeline is so much shorter for getting this stuff made. Like out of all the things I've written for, only one thing has come out. Like Craig of the Creek is the only thing that's come out. Like She-Hulk hasn't come out yet. Rick and Morty definitely hasn't come out yet. Like
Yeah.
I don't think my Robot Chicken episodes come out until like next year. So like
Okay.
it's weird, just like you're making all these things, and then you're like, oh, like I've worked on this stuff, but like no one, it's like you're saying, like no one's seen it. Like I haven't even seen it. Like I don't even know how what made it into like the final stuff. You know, it's
Yeah.
weird. So like, you know, getting comic books is like a great way to like still get that collaborative effort, but then also have the tangible thing in my hand. Like I can walk into my comic book shop and like
You
I
can
can,
actually prove it. Be like, I do something. I
yeah.
swear. I'm
I
not
promise.
faking this shit. I
Yeah,
know. I've
mom and
done
dad,
stuff.
I do make stuff. You can see my
Yeah,
name on the cover. It really is.
exactly.
It's me. Yeah.
Well, let's kind of like break it down a little bit, because now you gave me like the overview, so I can now
Yeah.
ask you specific questions. So regarding Craig of the Creek, it seems to me that at least for that show, there may be an outline of how the season's supposed to progress. Like you told me, that season is based on seasonal stuff. Like, oh,
Mhm.
you're gonna have like your fall episodes, your winter episodes.
Yeah.
But I believe that one seems to be the most flexible of the shows you kind of
Yeah.
worked in, with maybe the
Mhm.
exception of Robot Chicken, since there's sketches, you kind of like shoot the shit and you kind of like do what you
Yeah.
want there. Maybe
Mhm.
maybe there's some limitations, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But at least with Craig the Creek, it seems to be based around the idea of experiences from the writers and how can fit in to the narrative of Craig of the Creek. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that regardless of this, I haven't seen Craig of the Creek. I've
Mhm.
seen, I'm starting to get into the foray of new wave animation in Cartoon Network. I've seen
Yeah.
like Steven Universe.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
Steven Universe is kind of cool, because Steven Universe has like a narrative that's kind of
Yeah.
been ongoing. I don't know if Craig of the Creek is the same way, or if it's kind of like singleton episodes where they kind of like do stuff and like it's more
Yeah,
episodic. I don't know. I don't know how much
it's
of it.
not it's Craig is one of those shows where like, you know, they'll have like a canonical serialized episode,
Okay.
one every like 8 episodes, or like it'll be like a tentpole thing where like, you know, the idea is that like, you know, you I mean, I guess people don't watch stuff on TV now. It's like on the app, but like, you know, it's like Springfield. What happens in one episode is going to be completely reset generally in the second episode, except for like
Okay.
major beat things. Like
Mhm.
for the season that we were on, like there are like maybe 3 big things that are like, oh, there is a like a serialization to the episodes, but it's like, you know, it's one every 5 or 6 episodes. You'll be like, all right, oh, this character's coming back. Or like in our season, there was the big thing was like, oh, we discovered the other side of the creek, which means like there are the kids from the other side of town, and like that was the
That's
big
kinda
like
cool.
that was
Yeah.
the big like fun kid narrative, like, oh my god, we're gonna go play dodgeball. Like that was like the big thing. That's like, you know, every now and then they'd pop back in and be like, oh, we're gonna go meet the king of the creek on the other side, and like, you know, he wouldn't do anything for 5-6 episodes, and then you come back, oh, the king is mean, he steals all the candy or whatever. So like that's how that show would go as far as like serialization and canonization go. Like it wasn't hard and fast. Like I'm assuming Steven Universe probably does a similar thing. They may be a little bit more canonized, where like you could probably
like it feels episodic, but kind of like by the end of it, you kind of realize, no bullshit. This is all serialized. The thing is that there's like this little tiny adventure that might be happening with Steven within like, because the episodes are really short, like 11 minutes long, but like you know, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes, or it's like it feels like it's episodic, but then Pearl references shit that happened like 7 episodes ago. And I'm like, no, okay, so this is ongoing. Just keep going. Okay, so tell me more about the gems. Tell me, give me all this good shit.
Give it
like
to
it's cool because I've started watching it thanks to Fabiola, so that's why I'm like, you know, getting into this new wave of animation in Cartoon Network. That's why I want to get to Craig of the Creek as well. But you know, I'm slowly getting there with HBO Max because thankfully they kind of have all those things.
Yeah,
have
you done regular show yet?
I've not yet. No, I literally just started with Steven Universe. I started with like one of the big ones, but I want to get to like Adventures Time. I want to get to the regular show. I want to go all those.
Regular show is the one that's the show that made me realize that when I was in undergrad, I saw that I was like, oh, I want to like make TV for a living. I want to be that's what made me go to film school. Is like I watched that show. It's this isn't a spoiler. It's just like the premise is like it's two 23-year-old shithead friends. They're slackers. They work and live at a golf course. And it's just them going on weird adventures. And I was like, this is what I want to do, because I was 23 at the time too. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is exactly the kind of stuff I want to put out there in the world.
It's beautiful. That's relatable as hell too.
Yeah.
For us millennials.
Yeah.
Well, so then, like I said, so it seems like it's mostly based on the idea of like, well, you know, we have these ideas, so you guys tell me, and then I guess the idea that's the most solidified to make a whole episode about, then you get the story cred, and you're kind of like in charge of making that very specific outline. So it's not like a thing where you guys have to fight each other to see who gets ahead in terms of Craig of the Creek specifically.
No, because you do so many episodes in a season of Craig of the Creek that is like, because they have teams that rotate out, so it's like, you know, of course, the same, like the storyboarding team, 2 storyboard artists are a team, and like there's like 3 or 4 of them, so like, you know, that's not like the same people writing every single thing. The same thing with writers, like, you know, if 2 board artists are off that schedule for that week for animating or whatever, so like they'll be the writers in the room for that day. So like basically, so what you do is like you come in, we have like, you know, the whiteboard up, and we have just like ideas just up there, like blue skying. We call it blue skying. We just like toss it out there, and like nothing is bad, no wrong answers, no bad pitches. Like that's the idea. And like we sort of narrow down stuff, and we whittle things down to a list, and then it's like, you know, for instance, I told the camping one. So so we wanted to do, like, we were into the winter section. We are like, hey, what are some like just general pitches for like winter? Like, what do you guys think of? You know, people would be like, oh, you know, pumpkins, or like, you know, there's holiday stuff, or like Halloween, because like, you know, that happens. I guess that's fall or winter or whatever. You can get around it, like that stuff, or like, you know, snow day. And you're like, oh, snow day, yeah, that's a pretty quintessential kid thing. It was, well, I guess for like East Coasters, for like everyone on the West Coast was like, what the fuck's a snow day? They're like, it's when it snows and like you don't have to go to school. They're like, what? They're like, yeah. So like,
there's literally a movie called Snow Day. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there are things like that, and they're like, well, how does that work? So like people from the East Coast, like myself and the other writers, and like the showrunner would be like, hey, you know, they do this thing where like when it would snow at night, you'd wake up in the morning super early, and like you'd be on the TV watching like the local news, because at the bottom they'd have scrolling like, you know, Stokes County schools closed, or like Forsyth County 2-hour delays. So that thing, so like, oh, that's a very fun, like visceral, like kid memory, and it seemed like it'd work very well for this show. Like that's how it would go. And then you'd be like, hey, Zig, do you want to take this episode? I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I'm from the East Coast, like I have vivid memories of doing that. And then like, you know, you do your outline, and you mail it in, or you email it in to like the head writer. So the way it goes, like the show creators, the showrunners, and then there's a head writer called Jeff Trammell, super cool dude. You'd mail it into them. They'd give notes, like, you know, so Google Docs, like you just like, you know, when you get notes in the Google Doc, they're like, hey, maybe do this, and this. You fix that up. You send in, so you do the treatment first, which is like 2 pages, and then an outline, which is like the expanded version. And then once that's done, you give it to the board. You give it to the board artist. They write their episode, like physically write it, and then we read through that in the room, like basically a mini table read. So like that's when we'll like cut lines because it seems a little bit too long, or like we'll add stuff in, or like we'll rearrange things, and that's basically the process. And it's like pretty efficient because you're doing so many, and you also have so many sets of eyes on things. So like there are fresh ideas constantly coming in. It's never like the same 4 writers in the room. It's always like, you know, 5, 6, 7 people, and like of those like new people in there, like they're being rotated in from like just getting off an episode. So like they're constantly coming in fresh with like new eyes and perspectives on things.
That's pretty cool. I like that dynamic. It's actually kind of cool. Like,
Yeah, it's fun.
um, so then, okay, so now I understand how it works in that dynamic. So then, when you got like She-Hulk,
Mm-hmm.
I'll tread lightly, Kevin Feige.
Yeah,
I'll tread
yeah.
lightly. Okay.
You not say too much
So
because of the NDAs, but yeah.
no, of course, of course. But at least like I'm assuming that's maybe I'll take a wild guess. I'm assuming that that's the one that already had like a big structure in place, and it probably has to hit certain things, probably based on the bigger universe of Foot. So did you have a lot of creative input, or was it more of a thing like, well, you know, She-Hulk is this character, and she probably has to meet Hulk and probably Loki or whatever, and it has to happen by episode 5.
Oh
So
yeah.
Sig, like within this structure, you can play around a little bit, but you kind of have to maintain these things. I'm assuming that's how it goes. You tell me that, because that's my perspective from the audience perspective.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of freedom. You know, it was a
Okay.
room with like 8 or 9 other writers, and like we were really like, we have She-Hulk. This is like a rough idea. Like, so our Jessica Gal, the showrunner, is like, she's the one like, you know, did the big outline, wrote the pilot. Like, she's like running the show, so she like came in with the doc, being like, hey, this is the doc. This is like who Jennifer Walters is. That's She-Hulk's
Yes.
you know, human street name or whatever. Like, this is Jen, this is the cast of characters in it, this is like sort of a rough idea of like, you know, this is what I think the character is, and what we think her cast of friends are and her family and stuff, and like this is where I think it's going, but like this is just, it's just like an outline. Like, these are just like, it's a guardrails, it's not biblical. It's like, these are things that we're going to beat out, and you know, and that's what we did. Like, we spent the first week or two like blue skying again and being like, this is sort of like a rough shape for what we think is going to happen for this season. And there's like a couple of things where you have to be like, you know, we didn't know what's coming out, so like we didn't know what it was revolving around. Like, we didn't know if it's like, I don't know if Endgame was even out. I think Endgame might have come out, so we're like, we don't even know if it's like,
Yeah.
we don't know when in the timeline this fits or whatever. So like, you're just like sort of like, you have a lot of freedom to like make this stuff. And like, I can't speak for like what conversations were happening behind the door because I was just a low level staff writer, but I'm assuming there was stuff like, they'd be like, hey, this thing was going to be happening in X, so like be sure to steer clear of this, or like this character is, you know, in this thing. So like there would be conversations like that where like you can't use a certain character, or like, you know, trying to think what I can say, or like, you know, this is stuff that is being done on like the other shows, so like it's just going to feel like worn territory by the time that you guys get there. So like,
Okay.
but it wasn't like a mandate from what that I saw that's like, you have to hit this and this. It's like, oh yeah, this is, you guys came to us with the shows, like we're going to trust you to make the thing, and like we're going to trust you're going to use your best judgment. And because like there's like 4 of the projects going on at the same time, like if we need to, like Marvel's not afraid to like reshoot shit, which I'm sure you've read all those articles about. So like if we need to tie some shit in, like we'll shoot some shit. I'm assuming is what they were thinking too, because they, from what I've just read from the articles and stuff over the years, like, you know, Marvel does notorious reshoots for like, yeah, we'll spend 20 million to reshoot this thing to make it good, because they're like, one thing about them, like, say what you will about, you know, people have their qualms about MCU and just tentpole movies in general, but like, you know, they're not going to put out a fucking stinker. Like the very worst, they'll put out a B- movie, which
A crowd pleaser, like general crowd pleaser.
yeah. They'll put out a B-, which is like, yeah, I mean, making movies is hard. You know how fucking hard making movies is, but especially when you're making movies by committee. So like, you know, if most tentpole blockbusters are fucking trash, so like, even coming in with like a B- is fucking leagues ahead. And you know, that's let that. But yeah, you know, it's a great collaborative thing. You know, it was my first time in like a scripted room, so like I was like, you know what, I'm here to fill my specific niche, which is like, I'm the comic book nerd guy, so like I'll pitch my comic book stuff, and I'll let the adults talk about like the big emotional stuff and the big like, you know, overarching plot stuff, because you know, this isn't just, you know, germane to She-Hulk. This is like any writer's room that's like scripted, where like, you know, so the levels, so, you know, I don't want to give a whole detail and burn everyone out, but like the levels of writing goes like staff writer, story editor, executive story editor, co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, then executive producer. And those are just like levels. And that just means like staff writer first year, story editor second year, executive story editor third year. Basically, like every year that you've done it, like your title goes up. That's what it means. So like if you see a show that has like, you know, 4 co-producers, that means that those are like high level writers in the show. The same way that you see like, oh, this show has like Ted Lasso has 4 executive producers. That means that those are like 4 high level writers for the show. That's basically all that means. It's like a WGA role, boring behind the scenes industry stuff. Like,
Hey,
just
but
like
people like
break,
the boring behind the scenes, dude.
oh, good. Just want to break it down because like, I know it was very confusing when I first got it here. It's like, why does the show have like 7 producers and like, and then you see produced by, those are just like writers versus like the actual production staff. So like, I was a staff writer. It's like what my expectations were not the same as someone who was like a supervising producer. That was like, whenever it would come to like stuff that would be like way above my pay grade, as far as like, because I'm not even thinking about like art, like structure for like a season, like across like a bunch of episodes. I'm thinking like my episode, I'm like, oh, I just want to make sure my shit makes sense, so when I turn it out, like they don't like take my episode away. But like, you know, it's great having people that have that big picture, be like, you know, emotionally this makes sense that this character's doing this, or like structurally when you take like a 30,000 foot view, like if by episode blank they get to episode blank, like this should be happening, like logically it seems like this is where they should be. So like you really see where everyone's strength comes from, and it's just a really cool collaborative effort. But also it's, again, like you're learning things. Like it's the exact same way with Rick and Morty. Like I was a story editor for that show, so my responsibilities were like just a little bit dialed up more than staff writer, and like I understood and saw things a little bit bigger than a staff writer, but not by much, honestly. But like, not, it's like, you know, going back and like reading your old scripts or like watching your old shorts, you're like, oh god, I can't believe I used to act that way in the staff writers room. I can't believe I was that guy, or whatever the thing was. But like it's the same way with like, now you sort of know what to look out for. Like you sort of see you can sort of feel yourself leveling up with, like, you know, Rick and Morty. Speaking of like, you know, serialized show, like that's a show that, you know, really they hold their canonical serialized episodes for like the finale is usually how it works. Like, you know, a lot of it is like, you know, it resets each week, or like, you know, Rick does a thing, or oh, this week we're going to Bubblegum Planet, Rick, it's going to be so fun, and then it resets the next week or whatever. And then like they have the big blow generally for the finale where like, oh, all this shit was connected all along, you guys didn't know. And like that's sort of how Rick and Morty work, where like, you know, you have guys that have been on the people that have been on the show for like, you know, 2 or 3 seasons, who just like know this shit like the back of their hand, and like watching their conversations about like canon and like what the rules of the universe were, things that like haven't been said like on screen. That's the thing that they just talk about in the room, as far as like what the rules for the world and like how things operate, and like what Rick's POV is and ultimately where he's going, was like, oh, this shit is so cool. Like all this, and also like, you know, half of that stuff never makes to the screen. You know, it's just like it's just like how you know a character, like how, you know, like when like, you know, you're talking to an actor and like someone, they ask you like what their character is or where they came from, and like you may have like tons of backstory that they never even thought about, that never made it to the page, but you just know it because like you created that weird little reality in your head. There's like that little pocket universe in your brain. And that's the same way with Rick and Morty, where like, you know, it's a show that is very smart, but also is equally very dumb. I'm not a very smart guy, so like I came in with like my dumb shit. Like that's the space that I operated in. But again, you know, it's a show that like, because it's built into the narrative, is the idea of like you can do anything, because Rick is like a god in a sense, where like he can like do anything, and you're in a universe where you can like, all right, we're going to go to Cowboy Planet, or we're going to go to like Pasta Planet, or we're going to go to like whatever world and have a thing set there. Like you have so much freedom when it comes to story that you can do basically anything, because you can just create it. Because in this world, you know, we have pie eating contest planet, or we have trampoline world or whatever. Like you can just like follow that flight of fancy. And they had this really cool saying in the room that, you know, it was never like this doesn't work or this is bad. It's like whenever you hit into like a roadblock, you would say things don't work, but you know what I mean? It wasn't like this isn't working. It'd be like, or we wouldn't say no to things because they were difficult. We would spin it as like, this is an offering. It's just like, you know, this may seem like a difficult roadblock, but like really what it could be is it could be a fun character thing, or it could be something that we didn't see coming. And like, what is the offer to that challenge? And like, how can we face that? And like, how does it strengthen the show or strengthen like the characters or the episode that we're doing? And like that's something that I just sort of have brought it into like outside of that, like brought into like my everyday life is like, yeah, this, what is the offering for this? Like if I get challenged on something, like how can I recontextualize and reinterpret that and see the good inside, the good of it, or also see like, this is a roadblock, but like what's the other angle that I'm not thinking of to come in and like see how I can like land this plane or like stick this landing. And sometimes you can't stick the landing, but like the idea of being like hitting one roadblock and be like, nope, fuck it, I tried, I'm done. Like that's sort of a defeatist attitude, but as opposed to being like, oh, this script isn't working. Like I was writing a feature at the same time too. So I'm like, this second act isn't working. Like, why are these aliens here? But I'm like, oh, that's an offering. Maybe it could be a fun, maybe there's a joke in that. Maybe there's a fun reason why these aliens are taking over this shitty hometown or whatever. And like, that's just like another thing that like I've just sort of like learned as I've gone through the process. And those shows have been very great because they have, overarching story stuff that we also break together. But then also with Rick and Morty, you can reset it again like you would in Springfield for the most part.
That's interesting that you mentioned that with Rick and Morty, because there has been, I don't know if you read about it, there's been a lot of debate regarding season 5 as a whole. Some articles have argued
we got death threats.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
I wouldn't go that far. I just critique it in a different way. It's interesting because obviously Rick and Morty has become like a pop culture sensation, especially I think since season 3, that's when like it hit its peak. Not in speaking of bad sense, but when it exploded into popularity, into like
that's when it like crossed the threshold
right?
into like being a part of the cultural
exactly.
zeitgeist.
So it was very fascinating because then of course that means a lot of extra eyes that were never there coming to the forefront. So especially regarding season 5, it's very interesting you mentioned, because you did mention this little tidbit where you said that the show is technically serialized, where a lot of people have argued the contrary, because a lot of people have felt, especially in this season, that while the other seasons have been kind of serialized, this season in particular has been very episodic. But then, the last 3 episodes was when you started weaving the serialized elements into it, to where it ended in that very shocking ending, right? But people have argued, and this is articles, it's not me saying that, I wouldn't go that far, but this was articles like Screen Rant, stuff like that. They were like arguing, the need for serialization of Rick and Morty. The creators clearly hate their fans because they clearly don't hate canonical, like they don't like canonical elements, they don't like serialized elements. And I view it in the sense of like how South Park approached their show, because if you remember, it was always episodic. Except for a few key like trilogy episodes or whatever. But then when they had like that cathartic episode with, I think it was Kyle, or no, it was Stan. I'm sorry. Stan had like this catharsis or whatever. And then seasons going onward, they became serialized. So they're like the flip. But Rick and Morty seems to be doing the opposite. So where they felt very serialized before, at least in terms of at the base level, at least on a character development scale, they seem to be serialized. Maybe they could go wacky adventures like Boob World or Trampoline World, but there were still elements of character development weaved throughout. But this season, it did not seem like it was that way. Was there a shift? I mean, you came into the forefront right now, but was there a shift in how they want to handle the show going forward? And is that the reason why that you know of? Maybe you don't know. Maybe you're just doing your job.
So I did season 7 and season 5 just came out. So like, I don't know. I mean,
so you're very far off. Okay, cool.
Yeah. My shit's not coming out for a minute. It'll be a while before my shit comes out.
Cool. So know like a lot of stuff that's gonna happen. That's awesome. That's cool.
Like the first day they like showed us like all the animatics for like season 5 or that were done, like all the scripts, and like it's some fun shit in there. Nice. I don't know. It's I mean, I'm so close to it because I obviously have a biased opinion, but like I think speaking to like the character development, I feel like season 5, like the arc for like the serialization is more character stuff. Like it's, if you watch like season 1, even season 1 through 3, honestly, of most of up until Pickle Rick is really, I mean, he's still a shitty person, but like he actively works to sabotage his family and hates them. Like that's what Pickle Rick is all about. Like he would much rather turn himself into a pickle than deal with it. Than deal with his family in therapy and what the trauma that he's caused his family. But with season 5, from what I remember, like honestly, I haven't watched this stuff since like I first got the job, so like it's not fresh in my mind. But like he cares about his family. family in in the way that Rick, as much as Rick can or he's willing to admit, like, he like goes out of his way to like not only help his Morty but help the other Mortys. Like he he like he just like the season finale, Rick's Samurai Rick or whatever it was called. I can't remember what the
Yeah, the
production name
anime, kind of like the anime riff they did with the
yeah.
crows.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rick and Two Crows. That's the
yeah, the Rick
shorthand.
crows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for that one, like it's sort of it's almost like a coin flip, the other side of the coin to Rick, to Pickle Rick, where like he's not going to willingly distance himself from not only Morty but the family because he knows that he is a bad element for them. Like he's only going to cause them to present their worst selves. Whereas like that's not a conversation I necessarily think that like season 2 Rick, even season 3 Rick would have, because like his whole thing is that like he doesn't give a shit. Like he's a guy, he can always jump into another universe and find someone else. But like I don't know I can't remember if it's been touched on in season 5, but I think it has. But like I feel like he still mentions stuff with like Dr. Wong, that he still goes to like this therapist a
He
little
did.
bit.
I think he no. Yes, there was. I think there was an episode with Wong. Like it was a brief stinger with
Yeah.
Wong. Wong shows up for like 10 seconds, I think. But yes,
Yeah,
Wong was
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, so all that stuff where like it's very small serialization stuff that's like it's like one of those things that would play, I think will play better for a rewatch when like all the episodes are out, so you can like
Mhm.
binge 2 or 3 in a day. You're like, there is like it's sort of like it's like almost like a minor note to like South Park, because they did like seasons that were like serialized, where like things like we would be referencing like the next episodes, like things had consequences, right? From what I remember, like, yeah, and I think it's sort of maybe in the same vein of that, where like they're very small character stuff, but like the serialization is more in like how the characters interact, because again, we as an audience have been with these characters since like 2014 or some shit, so like
Yes.
we know, we have a general idea of what they are. And we also, now that they're having these subtle changes, where I think if you rewatch stuff and especially if you do a rewatch of like season 1 through 5 and like, oh, Rick has grown as a person. Not only that, like the family has grown as a person. Like Nimbus, the weird Aquaman guy in the first episode, like
Mhm.
he is like this element that comes into the world, and like we see that his story with Beth and Jerry is that like, oh, Beth and Jerry are fixing their shit actively because of Dr. Wan. Not only that, it's like they're experimenting with like their sexuality, like they're both like maybe they're becoming bi or pan, like they're opening themselves up. And like
Mhm.
Rick admits his love for like Bird Person in like episode 4 or 5 or whatever, with like
Yeah.
Rick would never say that he loves anyone in any
Yeah.
other episode before that. So like I think the serialization, I feel like I've said this like 1,000 times, I think the serialization is more character based in this season,
Then plot based.
more character than plot, which I think is an interesting take, because you don't feel like you see that much, especially when it comes to animated sitcoms and
Yeah.
stuff. And I think that's I think that once people like start rewatching stuff, when like before season 6 comes out, like they'll be like, oh, this was the through line for this season. It wasn't like beating you over the head, but there was some like little fun character stuff that was developed and sort of paid off, that we see those seeds planted in like particularly season 3. Like Pickle Rick, I think, is like the linchpin between a lot
Yeah.
of this stuff, where like you see these little seeds planted and now they're starting to grow in like little saplings in following seasons.
Okay. Let's go back to She-Hulk, and then I'll go back to Rick
Mhm.
and Morty. So in She-Hulk, I'm gonna ask you a wild question. Like, what's the wildest thing you pitched for She-Hulk? Was it
Oh, I
something like,
can't say. I
you
can't
can't
say.
say? Dang it.
Yeah, I
Okay,
can't
fair
say
enough,
that. I
fair
would
enough.
love to say, but I
Oh, okay,
cannot
okay.
say. Yeah.
Can you say when the show comes out, or you can never say?
Oh, I'll say when the show comes out for
Okay,
sure.
fine.
Yeah,
Well, I'll
yeah,
put a pin on that one,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
do want to know, because I know that you probably pitched some crazy shit for the show. Because
yeah.
I'm thinking, like, since you're saying that you kind of have a sense that you don't know exactly where to fit this in, it
Mhm.
seems to be a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
But there's obviously, like, you probably write the outlines, you do the baseline stuff, but probably someone up ahead will be like, okay, like Sig mentioned this, but we can't really use that because we know that in the grand scheme of things, for real, we can't use it. But we'll never tell him. He's a fun guy. We'll just let him pitch his crazy stuff.
Now, what's funny is that like I didn't mention this, but like the way
Yeah.
that shows work is that like you break them all together in a room. It's just like you and all the other writers break the episode.
Mhm.
So like what is cool about that is that like you get around that, because like it's like you and all the other people agree that this is what Act 1's going to be. This is what Act 2 is going to be. This is what Act 3 is going to be. And then it's going to be like
Mhm.
this is the A story, this is the B story, and like really what you're doing is you get like, you know, a feeling for like what's going to happen. Like the room sort of roughly breaks it, and then like it's your idea to like inject your personality into it, inject what you think is funny into it. For comedy anyway, I'm sure drama is like injecting what you think stakes are. I don't write drama. It's like, you know, whatever that equivalent is. Like,
Yeah.
so like luckily like you're not gonna be like, I'm gonna take a fucking wild swing. Also, since it's my first room, I was like, I'm gonna stick as close to this thing as possible because I don't want to be the guy that the fucking staff writer that turns into crazy outline that people are like, oh, did we make a did we
make a
hitch our
mistake
guy?
here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did we make the wrong move here? So like you don't have to get sidelined by all that. Like, no, I'm sure there may have been like conversations behind the door when it came to like, you know, we can't do this because they're being used in
Yeah, they're
whatever.
being
Like,
connected or whatever. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
assuming that
I'm sure
that
that
must have
stuff
happened.
happened all the time. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
luckily about me is like I'm a staff writer, so like I didn't have to hear any of those conversations. I just turned my
You're
episode
just
in.
yeah, you just turned your episode in.
Yeah.
Was it a fun dynamic having people that, because you told me you were like the comic book guy, which is kind of
Mhm.
curious,
Yeah.
and people might be hearing this and like, are they all supposed to be comic book people? It's like, no, that's not how the real world works.
Yeah,
Like,
but you don't
it's
you don't you
cool.
don't want that. You know, you mean
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So explain. So talk about that. Yeah.
I mean, also like it's like 2019 at that point. So like everyone likes genre shit. Like
Yeah.
everyone has seen a Marvel movie. Like everyone there is a fan. But like, you know, you don't want this is what I've learned about any creative aspect. Like you don't want everyone to have the exact same voice, because then, you know, you're not just writing. You're not just like, if I'm going to do a Star Wars movie, like, and if I have like if I'm doing The Mandalorian, like I want people in there that like care about Star Wars, but like not everyone is a Cinca fan, because then you're all thinking the exact same way. So like if everyone in their room was a comic book reader, they would only think about things from like, well, they did like this how they did in the comics, or like, whereas like as someone who like necessarily doesn't watch that much Marvel stuff, or isn't like a slave to like the Bible of comics or whatever, they can like, oh yeah, but like we don't have to do that. Like that's not the thing that we have to do. And also like we can add our own perspective into it. Like our room was really really diverse, not just in like, you know, representation as far as like, you know, the room was majority women, obviously because the main character is a woman, but also like age. Like there wasn't just like, you know, there was like people from like 25 to like their 60s, and like people that were like, there were lawyers in the room, there were people that were like fucking weird nerds like me that somehow weasel their way into the camp. So like you get a bunch of different perspectives, and like that's what you need, I think, to have to fill a world full of characters that's not just saying the same thing that you would expect. Because then also you expect stuff like, you know, people have been at this point been watching I've been watching movies for 100+ years. Like we know, like we may not, people on the street may be able to express what a 3-act structure is, but like they know it inherently
When we
because we've
see
been
it.
seeing them
Yeah.
forever. Like we've been reading and hearing myths from thousands of years. We know the hero's journey. It could be fucking Luke getting a lightsaber. It could be Hercules going on the labor to do the thing, or it could be Narcissus staring into the lake and drowning himself. Like we know what the thing is. Like we can replace that with any character, and like people just know what that thing is. It's like Rick's wants to turn himself into a pickle. I need to blow up the Death Star, or whatever it is. Like we know that as an audience, and because, you know, comic book movies or comics in general are myth based, like, you know, they're all hero's journey shit. Like people wouldn't know what to expect, and like you want to give them things that are new and interesting and invigorating, and something that you're not expecting. And like that's where I think having a bunch of different perspectives comes into play. Like it really is, like it is an offering where like, yeah, I want to have someone that has a different background from me, because like I know what my point of view is, and like
Mhm.
I know what I can bring to the table. But really it's a collaborative effort, and like I want to like with Craig, like, you know, like one of our directors was like a black Filipino lady, and I'm like, she has a complete, we can relate on like the black experience, but like she can bring so much more interesting shit from being the perspective of like not only a black woman, but like a black Filipino woman. So like that's the shit that like makes the show work, and like that's make any collaborative effort work, is that like you don't want to give people think they know what they want until they see it, and then you're like, well, I knew that was going to happen. It's like, yeah, you know it's going to happen because people like you wrote the thing, which I'm grateful to be one of those people. But like you do need outside perspective to get fresh ideas and new perspectives, and also, you know, you pitch, you know, chocolate, someone pitches peanut butter, and then the great reaction is that you have fucking both those things, baby, at the end of it. Like that's where
Yeah.
the true love comes from.
I agree. Yeah, because fans are like, no, we want, you know, the purest elements and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I can understand that from that perspective because, you know, like I'm a big Batman fan. So
Mhm.
when I see any Batman interpretation, even the one that's coming up, I'm super excited for that one. And it's not because I know Matt Reeves for a fact is like the most comic book nerd in the world. It's
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he's a good filmmaker.
yeah, exactly.
And when you have Batman, the Robert Pattinson, he's being Batman, and it's not because I know for a fact that I saw his Instagram and he has like 7 graphic novels of Batman.
Yeah.
No, it's because he's a good fucking actor. And I
Yeah.
know that they'll get the essence of what the character is. And I feel that when it comes into terms of adaptation, as long as you get the essence of what the character is and you have an understanding of that character, you can run with so many ideas. It doesn't have to be comic book based. You don't have to follow the adventure of She-Hulk when she did what I don't know much about She-Hulk. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
When she fought Abomination, like that story arc. You don't need to do that like beat by beat. You can do something more wild or more mundane. You can do like a bottle episode with her where she's stuck because it's a pandemic episode. I don't know, man. Just to give you ideas. Like it's a pandemic episode and she can't go to work. And it's like it pisses her off and she's like She-Hulk for half the episode. I don't know. And that's like an episode. You know what I mean?
Like, what you're saying is that people like, sorry to cut you off, but it made me think of like, no one knew who fucking Iron Man was 10 years ago. Like that was that when I say that was a C-list character, that was truly a C-list character. Like no one gave a shit about Iron Man. Like the big Marvel characters were Spider-Man, Hulk, Fantastic Four, and
then Spider-Man again.
And then Spider-Man, like no one gave a shit about Tony Stark, besides the Wu-Tang Clan because they wrapped it because one of them had the name. But like, truly it's like you need the biggest fan. You need someone who gets the character, and like Jon Favreau got the character, Matt Reeves gets the character of the Batman, and like honestly, like most of the characters that like that Marvel put out are like fucking D-list C and D-list characters. Like no one knew who fucking Guardians of the Galaxy was 8 years ago. Are you kidding me? No one. My mom knows who Groot is at this point, but like,
which is like, wild when you think
crazy.
about it.
Yeah, my mom knows who Thanos is. Like, these are such deep cuts, which sounds crazy at this point because they're a cultural in the cultural zeitgeist. But like, it's like no one knew who these characters were. Like, the biggest character was Spider-Man, and he didn't come into the series of like year 10. You know what I'm saying? So like, but people got these characters. Like James Gunn gets those characters. Like James Gunn got Suicide Squad, like, I'm saying, like, since we're sticking in the realm of superhero comic book shit, but like, they get those characters, and because of that, they're able to like elevate it in a way that you wouldn't if you didn't give a shit about like what you were making.
Exactly. And you got to consider the fact that you're making these for general audiences. This is not like a type of A24 shit where you're like, well, fuck you, I'm making the dream for myself, and if you like it, cool. If not, I don't care. But no, you gotta think about like the fact that this has to make money. So you have to kind of like put this balance in perspective where you're like, okay, the fans need their certain elements. They need their character to be correct. They need to be aesthetically like the comic book, or as close as we can get within reason. Maybe there's a little Easter egg. Maybe there's a general outline of a very important arc in a comic book. But everything else has to be kind of like relatable to a general audience, so it can be more digestible. Not in a way that is kind of dumbed down. I don't mean to say dumbed down. I just mean in a way where everyone can enjoy it. Like you said, the fact that your mother knows Groot, the fact that your mother knows Thanos, when I knew Thanos when I was in high school, and I'm pretty sure if I told my parents like, oh, Thanos is like this badass purple alien monster that destroys half the universe, they're like, stop it.
It's the complete idea of like the 4-quadrant. That's what it's a true 4-quadrant movie. Like you have young, you have teens, you have people our age, and then you have older, and like that's they offer things to different people. And like I know people don't like those things, and people have thoughts on them. Like, I get it, but also it's like you don't have to watch them. Like I have never seen any of the Twilight movies, but I know people fucking love those things. More power to them. I know people like I haven't seen any of the Fast and Furious, but people fucking love those. And honestly, anyone that's like stoked to go watch anything, I'm especially like an exploitation movie like the fucking franchise or the Fast and Furious franchise. Is like, yeah, great, go see the thing. I don't care as long as people.
Them. They're so ridiculous, man.
Like, I want to watch them because like I saw that they go to space in the last one. I'm like, yeah, I need to. Like, you remember me at SCAD? Like I was the exploitation guy. Like I loved all that shit. So like the idea like that $1 billion franchise is just a car exploitation franchise. I fucking love that. Like I'm 100% for it.
Well, what was fascinating of the Fast franchise is how they evolved, because at the first 2 or 3 movies they played it straight. There were like street, like underground street race movies, and they kind of played it by the rules, or by the rules in terms of like a Hollywood movie would do. But then by the 4th one, they kind of like dismissed the whole idea. They're like, nah, we're making the heist films now with cars. It's like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And they get to the 5th one, which they shot here in Puerto Rico. And they had a crazy segment in Old San Juan, no, not in Old San Juan, in San Juan, where they have the bank vault and stuff. It's like a crazy action sequence. It's like, wow, it's kind of amazing. And they get to the seventh one, which is batshit insane. And then we get to the ninth one where they go to space. And it's like the I gotta admire the creative people behind it and the screenwriters, where they kept coming up with crazy, batshit, crazy stuff that kept making money. Because let's not kid ourselves, every year they kept making money. And, you know, this is supposed to be geared for like gearheads and people who like cars. But it got to the point where like literally grandmothers would go see Vin Diesel like punch people in a car.
They became superhero. Like there's like I saw the Hobbs and Shaw one with like no context. So I'm like, I think like the guy's like a super soldier. I'm like,
yeah, Idris Elba is literally a super soldier.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm like, how do we get from drag racing to this? And like, I loved it. Like that's
the fascinating thing about this franchise. The evolution is, you can kind of even point to how the models and what was popular in Hollywood shifted, and you can kind of pinpoint it to like a fast movie. When they were playing it more straight, is because, you know, that was an element of like trying to be pure to what you were selling as a franchise. When they started doing high stuff, it's because there was kind of like Ocean 11 movies probably coming out during those times. And now we have the superhero stuff where like Vin Diesel literally punches a car and he like breaks it in half. It's like,
The
that's
Rock
kind of
literally
insane.
holds a helicopter together with his
biceps.
It's
like, insane.
Yeah, I love it.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, it's fascinating as a franchise. It's batshit insane. It doesn't make sense when you really think about it.
Yeah,
but that's what it's fascinating from that perspective. That's why I love them so much. But okay, so like moving on to Rick and Morty then. So obviously you don't know. This is more of a broader sense and more of a screenwriter thing. The only thing you've seen come to fruition is your comic books and, of course, Craig the Creek. You have no concept of how your story, your dialogue, the stuff that you put in is going to be there. How much, since you probably talked about this probably with other collaborators and other screenwriters in the room, how much usually do the stuff in the writer's room end up in a show generally? What do you think? Or like a ballpark? It could be 0, it could be 100. Like, what do you think?
That's a good question. I mean, it changes from like, you know,
show to
show, like, you know, also from level to level. Like, you know, obviously, like I'd assume a staff writer or a story editor probably gets their stuff rewritten the most as far as like punching up. Because also another thing that you do in the room is you do punch up, which is just you go in and like so everyone in the room will like will have your screen up, you have your script up on like the giant like TV, and you'll go through line by line and you're like, all right, let's add this joke, or like let's put this up, or like let's take this out, it's reading a little bit long. So like you're already in the mindset like, oh, we're rewriting this because it's a group effort. Like, you know, like when you see an episode written by, it just means that like that person or persons physically typed up a script and then brought it in, and then like together the room wrote the episode together. Like that's how every TV show generally works, is that like it's a collaborative effort. Everyone is writing it together. So like, you know, I may have some jokes in like, you know, someone else's episodes. I probably will have jokes in someone else's episode. Like for Rick and Morty, like I may have some jokes in like season 6 or whatever of Rick and Morty. And like there's some people that will probably have some jokes in mine and stuff. And like I think Rick and Morty is also pretty notorious for like Harmon rewrites shit all the time anyway. So like, you know, I'm sure like when my episode comes out, it'll be probably pretty different, but it's going to be for the better. You know what I'm saying? It's like
it'll probably have like maybe the base structure that you kind of like gave out, and that's kind of it. Okay.
Yeah. And like that's how it is for the few shows that I've written on that were scripted. Like that's usually how it is. And like, you know, because really this is such a cliche, but like, you know, everyone says writing is rewriting, and like there's a really great interview from I'm gonna butcher his name, but I think it's like John Schwartzwald. He was like a OG Simpson writer. He wrote like outside of Conan, he wrote like all the like best tentpole. Like if you think of like classic Simpsons episode, this is the guy that was probably writing if he wasn't Conan O'Brien.
Is it like March the Monorail type of stuff?
Yeah, like that was Conan, but he wrote like if you look up like that, like, you know, classic
that
like,
level,
season,
exactly. Yeah.
We're like, oh shit, I remember that episode.
Okay.
but he had an interview maybe a couple months ago, towards the beginning of the summer,
Mm.
where he was just like talking about his writing process. And he's a guy that's notoriously doesn't come out a lot, so like people like paying attention. But like he had this really cool process where he just talked about like what his writing process. So he was like, I do not like writing. It makes me very stressed out. It makes my tummy hurt. So what I do is that like I will literally write, if I can, I will write it all in one day. Like I'll write the 30 whatever plus pages in one day, and I'll just have the dialogue be like the characters say what they're thinking. So it'll be like Marge will be like, Homer, don't go to the donut contest. You're gonna let us down by not paying for dinner tonight. And Homer's like, but I want to go to the donut contest because I am hungry. And like that's really all it is. So like I
Yeah.
saw that and like that, and then he said he'll write that. He'll wake up the next day and be like, wow, I have a script done. Like I wrote a script in a day, and like now the hard work is done, and now I'm just going through and punching things up and making it seem right. It's like, it's like if you edit something and if you do an assembly cut in one day, you're like, great, it's here.
Yeah.
It may be fucking hot garbage, but like I don't have to spend another waking moment like putting the thing, like I don't have to sync sound. I don't have to fucking pick up my selects. I can just have the thing done. And that's basically what this process was. Like I've been doing that a lot lately. So I will like generally like the process for writing comic books that I use is that like I got it again from my buddy Zeb, where like he'll draw out like a square, like a rectangle on a piece of paper, and like slot out, like make it like grid it up into like it's exactly 20 pages like you would be a comic. And he'll write like page one, it'll be like introduce character. It'll be like basic beats like introduce character, or like page 5 through 7 fight or whatever. And like that's what he does. And then, excuse me, I just had a burp.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
So then like he'll go in and like he'll write like an outline of like page 1 this happens, page 2 blah blah blah. So what I've been doing for like my last couple of Spider-Man issues is like I just literally write them all in one day. They're usually not very good, but like it's done and it's there, and then I can spend the rest of the week like fine tuning and re-editing and rewriting and like getting it to where I want to get. And like that's the process that like I just found super helpful. Like that's what I've sort of been trying to do more lately. But also like it just plays into the idea of like, when you're writing with a group of people, like they're going to be writing your shit and you're going to be writing their shit, because it's not like one person be like, oh, we like that person crushed the season. It's like we're all in this shit together. Like we're all making a season of TV. And it's like there's no really reason to be precious. Like I also was like, I never really got precious with my stuff. I'm like, yeah, like this person has a better idea, let's fucking go. Because like at the end of the day, like my name's gonna say written by on the TV, and like no one outside the industry is gonna know what that actually means. So like, yeah, give it your best stuff, I'll take it.
I like that. I like the fact that there's the idea of the ego being hurt or whatever, being bruised. It's not really that much of a deal because you're already there. You made it.
Yeah, I got.
And you're working with amazing people too. Exactly,
yeah.
And you're working with amazing people involved too.
Yeah.
So then in Rick and Morty, it's interesting then. So you say that, would you argue that out of all the shows and even the comic book aspect of it, would you say that is the most that where the creator is mostly involved in the writing process? Because I know Dan Harmon is like a writer as well. I don't know much about the showrunner in She-Hulk, but I'm assuming Dan Harmon is, because Community, and all the stuff he did previously. I'm assuming he's like a very like hands-on type of writer. Like I have to inject all the stuff that I've known from TV culture all my life. I gotta puke it out in this. So I'm assuming that maybe Rick and Morty, Dan Harmon is very involved in the script writing process. Would you agree?
Yeah, because
because
he Jessica didn't create She-Hulk. Stan Lee created. So like she had like we like she had the vision. So like we wrote to like fulfill her vision, but it wasn't like she created it. It was like Rick and Morty. Like Dan knows who Rick is because he thought it up in his head with Justin Roiland. Like he knows who Morty is because he thought him up in his head. So like he's one of those guys that like he has a pretty fun. I mean, he's not unbendable. Like you could pitch him for what he thinks, an area that you think like we could take those characters, but ultimately he's like he'll be like, I don't think Rick would do that, or like that's not who I think Rick is. And like he's a pretty hands-on guy. Like he, like I said, like he basically rewrites every episode, or like he has his fingers on every episode, because like that's just like what his writing process is. And also like he knows those characters more than anyone else could ever conceivably know those characters besides Roiland. So like he's pretty hands-on. And also like because I don't think I touched on this, but like he has his whole story circle stuff, like that's his process for writing. So he has a very specific way that he can process how story is written. So like when you have that factored into like a story that he created, and he has a like, you know, basically a patented, you know, his a self thing that he created for like writing his own stories, like he just is going to inherently have a lot of hands on it to begin with, because like you have this process sort of like, you know, for those who don't know, Google Story Circle, Dan Harmon Story Circle, like it's too much to get into now, but
There's
like
literally an episode. The train episode is that. Just so you guys
yeah,
know.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. They just go this how he structures writing, and it's how he structures writing his shows, famously Rick and Morty, Community, and all those things. But like
Mhm.
because he already has his fan print in that, as far as like what what your process is going to be, he just inherently is going to be more invested into it than like than other writers would be. The cool thing about Gal is that she also like she wrote the Pickle Rick episode, so like she already had that story circle stuff in mind. So like, you know, there'd be times when like she would throw a story circle up for stuff on the board, and like we'd break through it. And like to me, I'm like, oh my god, this is like watching Obi-Wan, like this is like watching Yoda like lift the the X-wing out of the swamp or
Yeah.
whatever. Like you're seeing the magic go through. But yeah, they're all involved. Just because he, just by virtue of the fact that he created it, he's going to have more say and I think more stakes in it than someone who
Mhm.
didn't create, you know, their show or whatever. But like he's pretty involved. Like he has takes. Like he was always there for especially in the beginning when like we were blue skying stuff. Like, you know, we'd always run things. We'd always break stuff in the room together, and then like as we got further along, like he'd pop in and like we'd read table read our episodes and stuff, and that's when he'd give his thoughts and be like, I don't know if Rick do this, or I think Rick would do blah 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 blah, or like maybe we could maybe structurally this makes sense. Maybe let's like shift things around, or let's maybe again like you see an offering like, oh maybe because we established this, what if we did this with Rick and then we can go with this later on in future episodes and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I got two comments here before we keep going. Miguel says, bear with me here. I'm driving, but I got some questions. Okay, be safe. You can
Be
ask
safe,
questions as
yeah.
long as you're safe.
Yeah.
And XV and Richport, we're in here, baby. XV and Richport is another podcast. Is
Oh,
our
great.
page. I collab with them. We talk about what if. We talk about
Mhm.
Marvel stuff. They had an episode
you-
today.
Yeah, it's
So-
great. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's fantastic. That's my favorite one so far. It's really
This
really
one
fun.
today, okay.
Yeah,
My favorite
it's
one
really,
has
really
been
fun.
the Doctor Strange. You know me, I'm a
Yeah.
depression kind of guy. So
Yeah.
when I saw Doctor Strange, I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's top three. Mine is like this new one that just dropped, Doctor Strange and T'Challa if he was Star-Lord. Those are my three. Yeah.
It's been fascinating the what if, because it wasn't what I expected. I will
What were you
say
expecting?
that I thought it was gonna be a more classical what if. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, yeah.
that was gonna go like very wild and very out there.
Mhm.
I understand the reason why what if had to be the way that it is, because you obviously have this built-in audience that
Yeah.
has a comprehension of this comic book world, but it's only the MCU
Yeah,
world.
exactly.
So you can't be like, what if Galactus went to the beach one day?
Yeah.
Like you can't do that, because
Yeah.
it's just people are gonna be like, what is a Galactus?
Yeah, who
And
the
they don't
fuck
have
is
time
this?
to explain that.
Yeah.
So I understand that within those confines, they kind of have to be like, well, we got to use the characters already exist in our universe. We can kind of mix and match and do some
Mhm.
little remixes and stuff, but we kind of
Yeah.
have to work within the sandbox, which
Mhm.
I understand why, but it still kind of sucks. But I will say that that's kind of why I like the Doctor Strange episode, because even
Mhm.
though it starts off with a baseline, which is like essentially the first movie, but without the hands being destroyed and he
Yeah.
loses his love interest. It goes wild because
Yeah.
it's a very deep character exploration that I dare
Mhm.
I say you didn't even see in the film. Like I got a better
I
understanding.
think you could say that. I think you could very
Yeah,
much
because
say
I
that,
feel
yeah.
like you get a better understanding of Doctor Strange, and not his hubris, because
Mm.
he is a character who has a big ego. That's understandable from the movie and from the other ones.
Mhm.
But beyond that, it's what he's willing to do for the people that he loves, which is an
Yeah.
element you never really saw in the Doctor Strange movie. Very like it doesn't delve deep into that element, but you
Yeah.
get to see it here, and you see how self-destructive he is
Mhm.
to get to his goal.
Yeah,
It was
you
so
don't see-
sad to watch,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, you don't see the second half of that episode is
Yeah.
that's the one speaking that feels the most like what if, as far as like we're going to see some like what if we're about to ask, we're going to like you ponder that question.
Yeah.
The thing that I really like about it is that like you in the movies, from what I remember, I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but like you don't really get the sense of like the pathos of like what his deal is like, because like if you're a surgeon, like he's touted as like this brilliant guy, this really smart guy who's like an obsession, but you don't see how he is so able to like learn things that fast. Like he just goes to like the magical city, and then like he gets left on Everest, and then he just like portals back in, like he just knows how to do it. But like with this one, you see that he has like this obsession where like he is going to try to save save his love. He can't do it. All right, so he's going to spend hundreds of years in this like dark tomb capturing demons and stuff. And you're like, oh, he has it. There's a thing about him that the way that the reason he's able to be the best at what he's doing is because he has an obsession and he cannot break from that once he's latched onto things, which they do not cover in the movies at all. He's just like, oh, I'm a smooth talking rich white guy. I can figure this shit out. Let me buy Asian people. Let me go crack this thing in like an afternoon. Whereas opposed to this, like you see like what the dark seed is. Like you see what his sin is. His sin is like pride or arrogance. Like that's what his thing is. But like it's a great contextualization of who the character of our character that didn't get, I think, a lot of contextualization, at least so far in the Marvel movies, with like, the Spider-Man trailer comes out and people are like, why would he do that? Because like, oh, because he would 100% do that. Like you tell him not to do something, he's going to do the exact opposite. But like you don't really get that from the movies that much because it's not really like they don't cover his character that well. But like after watching this What If, I'm like, oh yeah, I get, it totally makes sense. He would try
exactly.
To like,
that's what I'm saying. Like that's why I love this so much, because he really delved deep into that character. The other ones have been hit or miss for me because they sometimes feel like it's just a retread of a movie or something, which is like, I mean, it's interesting, but I delve more, like go deeper, like like I wish, like I love Killmonger as a villain, like it's one of the top 3 villains, easy. But the episode regarding Killmonger was essentially a retread of Black Panther, except he won. Which I'm like, he probably would have won in the actual movie, but it's Black Panther. You can't let the bad guy win because But it gets pretty damn close in this episode. Since it's a what if, you can kind of go, you can play ball with that. He actually does win, which was a fascinating idea. But then it gets cut short, so I never see the result of his uprising. Like that's what I wanted to see when he becomes Black Panther. Like, oh, what is a Killmonger Panther like? And then the episode ends. So I'm like, no, I wanted to see this.
It seems like there's going to be like, I don't know if it happens in this season or if they're going to do like, I think they should get another season. I think I read that online. I don't know if they end up having another season where they end up doing like continuations of like previous on, because that seems, because I have the same thought. I'm like, oh, I want to see how this ends. Like, I don't know if they do another episode this season where like, oh, part 2. My bad, we forgot that we had a second part to this episode where things were getting really juicy, or if it's going to be one of those things where like, I had the same thought with like the Captain Carter one, the first one. I'm like, oh great, like I've seen Captain America, like let's get to the interesting part, which is her like waking up in like present day. I'm like, oh great, and then like the episode ends, so I'm like, I want to see that. Like that's what the what if that I want to see. Like I'm hoping they'll bring those characters back in like either future episodes or like if they get like more seasons, they'll like do continuations of those.
Okay, let's get into. Oh, there's a question. Oh, so Miguel Rios de Leon writes, "What's the process like in terms of the writers' room? Are a lot of episodes joint projects between the writers, or do you get a lot of time to shine individually?" Well, we've discussed this throughout. Cody could probably give you like a 2-minute summary of what he said in that aspect for you. I'll do it because you're driving, but he can give you like a little brief version of that.
Yeah, it's sort of a little column A, a little column B. Like generally, like for the shows that I've worked on anyway, like the room all breaks the season together. So like that just means like they all figure this shit out together. And then it's like you'll start divvying things up in like episode, like you get episode 3, you get episode 4, you get episode 7, and then like the room will like break that together. Like these are like the major beats of like what we think is going to happen. These are like the major scenes. These are like the major like bullet points of like act 1, act 2, act 3, A story, B story, C story, and then it's the writer. Then the writer goes out to outline and like writes what basically like it's an outline, like basically beats of like what happens, and like you'll have temp dialogue, you'll have like some jokes in there, like even if things aren't fully fleshed out, you'll be like Rick goes to thing, and then parentheses or alt, maybe this happens instead, and then that gets signed off by your showrunner, your head writer, whatever, and then you go out and you write your episode as an individual, bring it back, and then the room once again all writes it together. So like they'll add funny lines, they'll like add jokes, they'll like add alts to like maybe if like this first part of the first act isn't this a little wonky, and like you probably feel it anyway when you're writing. So like you may have a note that be like reader's note, what are some pitches on this? It's not working, and then like the room will work it together. So like it's like it's like the first part is like writing it together, the middle part is you writing it together, and like the third act of this is like everyone writing it together. So it's a weird, cool mix of like individual and like the collective working together.
There you go, Miguel. You got your answer. XV Richport says Party Thor felt like first viewer's day off. Oh,
Oh,
that's a good
100%.
pitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
good pitch for me. Now
Yeah.
I am very intrigued.
Oh
I
yeah, I
really
mean
want
the
to check
ending
it.
is straight up Ferris Bueller's ending.
Oh, that's
It's great.
awesome.
It's really
Okay.
really fun, man.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the exact weird big weird stuff that you want to see from
Yeah.
Marvel. And also, I don't know if you felt the same way about a lot of the other what ifs, but like the voice acting isn't like
Mhm.
fantastic. Like there are some like I think Chadwick Boseman always fucking shows up. He's always like putting in a pretty good performance, but like
Yeah.
with this one everyone is like, oh, we're having fun here. Like it's you're like, oh, we're all here. Chris Hemsworth is being very fun. He's like Thor Ragnarok level of like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, we're here to have a good time. Tom Hiddleston is having a great time. It's like it's a really fun episode, dude.
Awesome.
I can't wait for you to watch it.
I gotta check it. Mad John Hughes vibes.
Hmm.
Cool. Party Thor is a vibe. And Miguel says in all caps, you have credits for Aqua Theme Hunger Force. For the love of everything holy, tell me what that experience was like.
Oh yeah. So so when I was at Adult Swim, I was like I said, I was working under Casper Kelly, who one of the creators of Aqua Teen, Squidbillies, like an OG Space Ghost coast to coast writer. Um, so like as the director's assistant, like I would go with them to like recordings, and so like I would sit in with when them when they were recording at I can't remember the name of the place, like Echo Sound or something in Atlanta, but yeah, my credit for that was like I think I may have like I think I may have done a couple of casting things for them, and like I set in a couple of sessions when like Frylock, the guy that did Frylock voice, would come in and record and stuff, and it was a super cool experience. I think I I can't remember what season it technically was that I was on there. But it's super cool. It's so fun watching those dudes juggle like four different shows that are all so wildly different ends of the spectrum. Like you have
Yeah.
like Aqua Teen, and then you have Spitbellies, and then like you have live action Your Pretty Faces Going to Hell. It's a super cool experience. Super funny show, and I was like, I remember watching that shit when it first came on when I was like 13 or 14. So like there I remember I distinctly remember a moment. There was a moment when like there was like a couple of weeks when like Dave's car was in the shop and like I'd have to drive him to set. I remember one time we were just driving and he started like beatboxing and rapping as Meatwad. It was because he does Meatwad's voice. It was like the coolest fucking moment in my
That's
life.
beautiful, man.
I was like, oh yeah, this is the right choice. I made it, dudes. This is
Yeah.
all that I bury me a legend.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Xavier Richford asks us, how common is it to begin with a plot line and purposely leave it alone just to hit it at a later point? Example of being the hold the door twists.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, he said epic, by the way. Okay.
Yeah, I think. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I can't speak for that show because
Sure.
I never read the books, so like, I don't know
Yeah.
if that's something that they made up or if that's something that's from the books. But like,
Mhm.
I think I think that's pretty common. I think definitely more so for like the drama shows. Like for most of the comedy stuff that I've written for, it's one of those. I don't know how much they plotted out, but like for Rick and Morty, it could be like, oh, well, remember that character that was in this thing or this one thing that we dropped in like season 3? Like it'd be cool, like see where that led to, or like pick that back up. So like
Mm.
it could be a thing where like they plant stuff intentionally and then like, oh, we'll come back to it later, or it could be like, hey, I thought it was really interesting how this character popped up and like they reacted this way. It would be cool to like see that through and like follow it through and just see, what they're doing now. I think when it comes to stuff like the Dr. Wong of it, like that seems like a thing that they're planning and that as they went along, you'd be like, oh yeah, it was kind of cool having Rick get dressed. It was cool seeing Rick lose intellectually to someone
Yeah.
who was just a normal human. Like, he's
Yeah.
this, he visions himself as gods. And like, that's again, an offering. So like, you can go back through and be like, oh yeah, what if the family went there and like they started to get better? Like what if Beth and Jerry started working their shit out? And like, there's a whole season, I don't know if it was season 3 or 4, where like they were like divorced and like Jerry was like living in some shitty apartment across town and like Beth was like sort of thriving and doing her thing. And then like you learned that they got back together because they started going to see Dr. Wong. So like those have like been my experiences, like the little breadcrumbs that you drop and then you see things pick back up. But I can't speak for drama, but I'm sure they do that shit too. You're like, oh, this is a really cool idea that we could pick up in a couple seasons. Like I'm sure Game of Thrones do that shit all the time.
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure. Deke Lord says, Sig, you are a hero for many. Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
You too, Orengo, you too. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Liquid Nebula writes, that's just beautiful.
Oh, perfect.
Appreciate. So we haven't gotten to the comic book stuff, and I want to get to comic book stuff for a second. So I'll kind of just baseline, same question. How much of a creative freedom do you have in terms of the Miles Morales comic book that you did, the number 25, which was the
Mhm.
collab between a lot of writers, and the kind of ongoing one that you're kind of doing right now with Spider-Man proper. Like, is the baseline like, oh, as long as it's Peter Parker, you can go nuts, man. Just don't kill MJ for us, please. Like, what's the level of like what kind of amount of freedom do you have? What do
Mhm.
you have to stick to? Is there a crossover event that you kind of have to think about 5 months down the line? Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, I mean, so far, so of the things that I've written, I had a pretty big freedom. Like there are obviously status quo things. Like I'm not gonna like you can't kill Miles Morales in like
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
my issue, but like honestly, like so for Miles, that was like a short that I did, and basically, um, my editor Nick Lowe, who got me the job, he went the person that Zeb introduced me to. He sent me an email, like, hey, at the time this was like mid 2020. He was like, "Hey, I've been toying around with putting together this like Spider-Man anthology, like just a one-off, like celebrate him. Would you be interested?" I was like, "Yeah. Can I pick which Spider-Man?" He was like, "Yeah, sure." I was like, "I would love to do Miles." He's like, "Great. You got 10 pages. Do what you want to do." And I'm like, I sent him my outline, and like, sort of visioned it as like a short film. Like you have, 7 minutes to get in and out and keep a really small slice of life story. So that's what I went with. And like it seemed fun. Like I like the artist, like Natasha Bustos, fantastic Spanish artist, black Spanish artist. And like I was a big fan of theirs. And like I just loved my first book out the gate was for like, my Spider-Man, like the black Latinx Spider-Man. I loved that like my artist was like a black person. Like I loved that like just out the gate, like I got to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that led to this one shot, which is just those are just like one-off comics. For those who don't read comics, are usually like 30ish pages, so a little bit longer than traditional comic. And for that one, that was part of a crossover event, like it was a tie-in. It was called Siege Society #1. And with that, because like it's basically like, imagine if you just come in like you're the guy that's directing, you're the guy writing the Winter Soldier, Captain America, Winter
Right.
Soldier. Like, there's
Mhm.
so much shit that's like already happening at the same time that like I just came in. They're like, all right, this is what's generally happening. This is the vibe that we want. Like, we sort of wanted to do a retelling, or they wanted to do a retelling of, I think it's called like Avengers Under Siege. This very famous Avengers story where
Yeah,
like
I think I remember that one. Yeah.
yeah, you basically Baron Zemo and like a group of villains break into the Avengers mansion, which is just like in Manhattan,
Of
and like
course.
they take it over
As
and
you
like
do, as you do.
yeah, yeah, it's just like a big mansion in the middle of fucking downtown. But it's like he takes it over and like he beats the Avengers and blah 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 blah. And they're like, we want to do like a version of that for this event because there's an event called Under Sea or I can't remember I can't remember what the event was called, but basically in this world the Avengers never were. It was this group called the Squadron Supreme. They were like Marvel's version, like take on like DC, like
DC.
Justice
Yeah.
League, yeah.
Yeah.
And so like they're like, let's do that, but with like these characters. And they're like, since this is a one-off, this is like a battle book. So like basically, you can put it's a battle royale, put people in there. Most of them can die. If you want them to die, you can do that. Like, these are the main characters that can't die because they're going to be happening. They're supposed to be in other books, or this is happening concurrently. Blah 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 blah. So they sent over like a list of like 10 characters, 10 or 12 characters, like 6 per side. Like, these are loosely who we're thinking the team is. Like, if you have pitches, you could pitch some ideas. And like I pitched a couple of characters, and like, oh great. So like then we started writing it, and then like you would get like a message being like, oh, actually you can't kill that character because they're going to be alive. And what this is really when you see how an editor, like a comic
Mhm.
editor's job, just seems so stressful because they're keeping track of all that
Yeah.
shit, like what's
Make
happening
sure there
across.
was like a giant continuity that some freaking nerd
Yeah,
on Reddit's gonna be like, "Whoa, these Marvel
yeah,
idiots killed the
yeah,
character and showed up
exactly.
5 months later."
Yeah, like the shout out, they were doing a lot of work. So like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that for me is like they pitched the general shape, and then I was like, oh, cool. Like it's like a sort of like a heist battle royale type thing.
Yeah.
So like, it was pretty loose when it came to like writing it. And like all the notes were just like, I came from TV, so like I would overwrite dialogue because like that's what I'm sort of used to, because it's like Rick and Morty's a fast show, like they say a lot of shit in a short amount of time. So like that's what I was used to. They're like, hey, you don't have to worry about this, man. You got an art, you want to cover all that beautiful art with dialogue. I like, oh great, that makes perfect sense. So like if you
Mhm.
read one for each side, like I think my big takeaway was like I wrote too much dialogue. There's just like fucking balloons everywhere, but like that's like you get a lot of freedom with that. And for the Amazing Spider-Man run that I'm doing, basically that was so Zeb Wells, again from She-Hulk. He's sort of like the one that's like overseeing all that. So he was like, I want to treat it sort of like a writer's room. He's like, we had a lot of fun writing She-Hulk together. The writers that were have in the room with us, Kelly Thompson, she just won an Eisner for her Black Widow run. It's a fucking my favorite book. I yell about it all the time. Check it out. It's fantastic. Great art. Great emotional like just character work. Like there's arcs to it. Like which I know it sounds so base, but like a lot of comic books, it's like, oh, they punch each other and then it's over with this. But like at the end of it, like all the characters go through things, they come out of the other side changed, and like it's sort of how like Matt Faction's like Hawkeye sort of like set the groundwork for like what the Hawkeye TV show was. Like my view of Kelly Thompson's Black Widow is that like if this had come out, like if they hadn't made a Black Widow movie, or if they make another one,
this
like
would have been the movie essentially.
yeah, this would have been what they based on, because it's so fucking good. It's like it's undeniable like how good the book is. And like Saladin Amin, he's the guy that's been writing Miles Morales for like the past 2 years. So like it's a stacked cast. So like that was a lot of like we sort of again like TV broke the season quotation marks together, and then you have so much freedom. You're like, hey, this is sort of what we have loosely happening over this course of like all these issues. And then our editor Nick would be like, all right, Zig, you get these 2 issues. We're thinking this for like the villain, if you want to use this villain, but like you don't have to, but like this is what we're thinking. I was like, oh, this sounds like a fun villain. Yeah, I would love to do a Craven the Hunter. That seems like a fun weird guy to write about. Or like we want to bring in like the Doc Ock of it. So like you want to write some Doc Ock stuff. I was like, yeah, but then that's really it. And then like you really have like you have a place that you just need to get to. Like by the end of this, this needs to have happened for like the overall story for the other ones going forward. But like other than that, like you can do what you want to. And I was like, oh great. It's like most of mine are like they're more comedic because like I write comedy, and like that's where I come from, and like I got to like basically write our stories. And then at the end of it, like the editor will come back through and be like, we need to move these things around. But like you have surprisingly a lot of freedom when it comes to like writing comic books, at least in my experiences so far, as far as like what you want to do. Because I mean, you read that shit, like it's built in that like things change. Like the status quo is very loose. Like new writers come in every couple issues anyway. So like that's the whole idea, is that you keep things fresh and new, and like that's so you're built in a lot of freedom when it comes to like telling the stories that you want to tell.
Yeah, if not, there's a big cataclysmic event that resets everything.
Yeah,
So
resets
it's fine.
shit anyway. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Or if not, you have those in DC you call them Black Label, which is basically limited runs of like 3 to 8 issues, and you just go nuts with that. It's non-canonical, but it's like a reinterpretation of the character that just kind of exists on his own little thing. So
Exactly.
and I know Marvel does the same thing as well. Little Nebula says, I need that Black Widow in my life. So here's a couple of questions. And there's a couple of questions. We're gonna go through them a little, so I don't want to take up much more of your time. Look at Ebola asks, what is your favorite project up to date? It can be any of them. Go nuts.
Oh boy. I mean, it's I think it's a tie.
So hard, right? I know it's hard.
I know you asked for one. It's going to be tie. She-Hulk, because like I mean, Alejandro knew me and our buddy Andy Cervanta were like, we were the fucking black sheep of our class, because we unapologetically loved Marvel movies so much, and like we would always go and see them opening night, just me and him, and like
we did see one of them together. I don't know which one we saw together. Probably Winter Soldier or something. I know we saw one of ours.
Yeah. So like you knew that this is the thing that I wanted to do. So like getting that was like a fucking god dream. And then also like writing Miles Morales. Like I remember being in SCAD, me and my roommate Tristan, like when we heard that like, oh shit, there's a Black Spider-Man, like we drove to like our comic book shop, and like I literally have the issue like right next to me, and like I have that. So like being able to see that, and then like literally 10 years later, like I'm writing the Miles Morales, I'm writing a short in like the Miles Morales like 10-year anniversary. Like that's fucking surreal, and like that's such a feather that I'm gonna place on my cap forever. And like I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't gotten She-Hulk and met the people that I make. So like, or met the people that I worked with, and like they took a shot on me, and like that's all that I've ever wanted to do. Like that is to like write comic books and write shows that I want to watch, and like people like look like me can watch and be enjoy, and like that's I'm lucky enough to say that's where I'm at right now.
It's beautiful. Look at what I said. She's a hardcore Spider-Man fan. That's why she's hyped. My boy Miles, she's very hyped. The next question. From your perspective, what do you think is the better format to tell stories, films or series?
I think form follows function. I mean, it's such a fucking platitude I'm saying on my
Yeah.
point, but I think, I guess what's, I was just talking about this the other day on another podcast about, they're talking about how, like, where do we think we're going to go Star Wars wise? I think they're going to do more TV shows or features. And I think they offer, there's different offerings to each one, right? I think with like television shows, like the benefit of that is that like you sit with a character, if it's not streaming, like you sit with the character
Yeah.
for,
Longer.
2, 3, 4 months, like however many episodes there are every week, and like you get to see them grow throughout. You can see the characters grow. You have stakes because like you're with them along the journey. With features, it's so, because by nature of like, the 3 act, 4 act, 5 act structure, whatever, like, and you have 90 minutes to 2 hours to watch it, like it's so accelerated that like you feel like you've gone on a journey at the end of it. Like you, when you sit down and watch, the Empire Strikes Back, like you went on a journey because you were with these characters literally through the ups and downs of the character in
Yeah.
such a short amount of time that it hits you different ways. Like, Fruitville Station hits in a completely different
Oh,
way
yeah.
than like, yeah, right, then what's another great TV show that I'm completely blanking on that I watch all the time? Game of Thrones season 3, whatever. Like
Yeah.
those are both great shows, but they offer different things because of the medium that they're going through. So I think, even throwing in like a medium, like a medium like podcasting, like there are different storytellings, different stories that fit in different types of storytelling. I think whatever you think fits the project the most, also what brings you the most joy, like what sparks the most joy in you. Like if Following Your Bliss is writing like a television series, then write that. If Following Your Bliss is writing a fucking audio play, then write that. I think it's wherever you find the fun the most and pushes the most whimsy is, I think, what you should dictate your story towards.
I agree. Yeah. It's all about what's the best way to project your story. It could be a book. It could be it could
Hmm.
literally be any medium, as long as you think
Yeah.
it's the appropriate one to get that story that you want to get out there.
Hmm.
So I agree. I agree fully with what you're saying. Let me. Okay. What stories would you tackle if you had full liberties? Hmm. If you had
Oh
literally
man.
full liberties. Damn.
Oh
That's
boy.
a good one.
That's such a good question.
Yeah. I
Um,
like these
I,
questions. They're pretty cool.
yeah,
Thanks, guys.
so I mean, I'm this is an IP project, but like I fucking love Gundam. Like Alejandro knows, I love anime. Like I
Fuck
love
yeah.
the Gundam series. It's such a fun series. It's
Yeah.
um for those who don't know, which I'm assuming you would because you're watching this, so like I'm assuming you know nerd shit, but like it's a series takes place in an alternative future in the where like there's war between Earth and space. These giant robots, these mechanical suits called Gundams. It's all about a war of like freedom and independence from one faction against another faction. And like what I like about it is that like it's not like Star Wars where like there's
Mhm.
good and bad. There's like a lot of gray. Like there are characters that you meet on like one side of the force, or one side of an opposing force that is like, they could be nice, they could be complete shitheads. You meet you meet people from like the hero side of the faction that are sadistic and fascist, and like they're not very
Yeah.
likable, and like the gray that they live in between that. But there's a series called Gundam Thunderbolt, which is a
Ooh.
really great encapsulation of that, where it's like these two like divisions fighting against this really useless piece of space. Like it's the first episode, they're like, this is a dead zone, like it's not here, I don't know why the fuck we're out here fighting, it makes no sense, like there's nothing but destroyed debris. And it's just like one side is like war veterans who have like had limbs and stuff blown off fighting against like just newly conscripted rookies who have no skill and experience, and like it's just fucking heartbreaking. And I was
Yeah.
like, I would love to like see that as a series. Like I would love to adapt that with like live action and like give it a little bit of a spin, and like add some like what is that mapped over, like people of color that join the fucking military because that's the only way they can get
Oh
out,
yeah.
and they end up being like fucking space fodder for a cause that they have no stake in other than they want to get a better lot in life.
I mean, it's literally Starship Troopers with mechas.
Exactly.
That would
Yeah.
kind of be the idea, but like
Hmm.
playing it very, very straight. Like because
Hmm.
I know it was satire. Like obviously the Starship Troopers is basically
Yeah.
satire, but there's some
Yeah.
real crude elements to it that kind of like
Hmm.
jog you from being like, whoa, it's not funny anymore. It's kind of like
Yeah.
horrific. So
Yeah.
Gundam
Yeah.
would essentially be like a very straight version with mechas, obviously, because mechas are fucking
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gundam is amazing, man, for sure. Oh, of course, Gundam, a man of class. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Miguel writes a gigantic question, but you already kind of answered it, so you're good. How about when it comes to what you write versus how the artist puts it on the page? Is there anything you find sometimes it doesn't match what you had in mind? Like, this is how I wrote it, but now I envision it. Is there a lot of FaceTime collab with these artists, or is it just you doing your job, or they do theirs? Well, Cody at least said the first part. He did say that when he's kind of seeing the final product, if he see doesn't match it, he kind of rewrites a little bit to kind of match the visual aesthetic. You can
Yeah.
talk about the other question if you would like.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like, that's part of the process that you get in like those thumbnails that, like I was saying earlier, like those rough outlines, that's when you can get your note process. Like I've been super lucky to work with some very fantastic artists. Like the person that wrote or that drew Siege Society is drawing these issues for Spider-Man with me. Shout out to my boy Paco Medina. He fucking rocks. He's such a talented artist, and he's also one of the like just coolest dudes to talk. I've never met him. Like we only exchanged through emails, but like it's also very pleasant. I'm like, this is great, brother. This is such a fun script. I can't wait to collaborate. I'm like, your art is fantastic. So like a lot of that is like,
Awesome.
we'll get some stuff in, and like there was a page where I had a car conversation between Spider-Man and someone else, and like the originally how I saw it in my head was like, I come from directing, so like I'm used to like the lead character on the left and like the person on the right, and like that's just like something that's been beaten into me. And like when I got the pages, they were flipped. It was like the person on the right and like Spider-Man on the left, or whatever that I didn't like it. I was like, this feels so weird. Like I just have to say something. So I just told him, he was like, perfect, let's make it, brother.
Awesome.
I want to make the best thing possible. And like that's the great thing, is because also they're like, the way that you script out a comic book script is that like you'll be like page 4, 5 panels, and like panel 1 this happens, panel 2 blah blah blah, and then you'll have your dialogue. So like sometimes I'll have pages that'll be like page 4, 6 panels, and like I'll get 4 back, and I'm like, oh, it works so much better this way, because like they're artists, like they have a visual eye, and like it's like working with the cinematographer. That's exactly how I think about it. Like I'm working with the cinematographer, making a shot list, and like, maybe I don't need 4 shots to cover what we're doing, and like we can do it in 3, or we can do it in less, or like maybe we can add more, or like maybe they have a thing called acting. That's what they call how they draw characters, like to convey the emotion. And like Paco is a fantastic he can really capture some fantastic acting. And like sometimes there are pages where like I don't even put dialogue. I'm like, oh, I'll just let
Yeah,
the
you
art
just
speak
let
for
that
itself.
breathe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I hope that answers
That's really
your question.
No, that's cool, man, because I have seen comics, and back in the day they usually have like big blocks of text. My
Yeah.
favorite, and I literally have the comic book right here because a friend of mine borrowed it. While I love Crisis on Infinite Earths, if you literally scrub through, it's like blocks of text throughout. It's fantastic artwork, but some of them just have blocks and blocks of text. I get it; it's a big event, but I do like when you let the art breathe a little bit, because this is fantastic art that something gets bogged down by the gigantic exposition that you have.
That's the one thing I learned from Siege Society is like, Paco Medina is killing the art. Let's just like, we can work in tandem. It doesn't have to be 50-50. It could be like 30% words and 70% art sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And it's super cool because you let some of the art breathe, you get your shot in, you get your story in, but there's just moments where you kind of like have to look at the what you're seeing. You're like, I gotta let this moment kind of exist, because the emotion's not gonna be conveyed if I literally have a monologue with Spider-Man say, I am sad. It's like, no, you fucking see it with the amazing art. Why do you need to say it in a little stupid square? Don't. It's just don't. Which is great. And I love that you kind of like well, of course, because you're a film person, you understand that some moments just need to breathe no matter what. Liquid Nebula asked 2 more questions and we're good. Who would be your perfect live action cast for Miles? Oh, Jesus, man, that's a good question.
Oh,
but Miles is straight up from the comics, physical wise, personality wise.
Oh fuck, I don't know. This is how you can tell that I'm old, because like I don't know who the hot young like black
the new
actors
TikTokers. Go ahead, say those TikTok kids.
I mean, I the guy that did him in Into the Spider-Voice the Spider-Voice, like I think he's like a fantastic. He was in this show called he's on that Baz Luhrmann Netflix show. The I think he's not the Get Down or some shit like that. But like, he's a fantastic actor. Like he captured Miles, I think, perfectly and Into the Spider-Verse. Like I'd love to see him take a live action crack on it. But because also like he's a little bit older. Like I like to see like older Miles, like traditionally, I feel like Peter Parker's always lived in like that young mid-20s, in my mind anyway. So like I would
Yeah.
like to see that version of Miles, because I feel like Miles has always been like 16, 17, 18 in the comics, at least from what I think of. So like I
Essentially,
like
yeah.
to say,
You never kind of see like a little bit older. Like Peter Parker
yeah,
was allowed to grow, but Miles, maybe because he's
yeah,
new, and they still
mhm,
think they can kind of like take out adventures in a teenage years. That's why they haven't
yeah,
made him grow a little bit more. Maybe
yeah,
that's
yeah,
why.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
that's why. But I'm you know what? I'm a little sad that you didn't mention Donald Glover, sir. Why
Oh
did you not
yeah, that's
say
right.
Donald
That's
Glover?
yeah,
That
it's
was
crazy. Yeah,
supposed to be your
it's
right answer.
crazy. It's crazy that that one fucking shitpost ad campaign led to the
Yeah.
creation of fucking Miles Morales. Like that's so crazy.
Yeah. Oh my god. Oh, okay. So we have some people talking about 78 RX ALA
Atlas.
Atlas still in my deck. So we
Hmm.
keep very fine taste, sir. She
Look, I
gives
have
you a rock
I have
emoji.
the RX-78. Yeah,
Nice.
Alex Gundam. So like I'm right there
Go
with
ahead,
you.
flex, man. Flex. Go ahead and flex anything you want. Go ahead. Shamik Moore is
Shamik
probably
Moore.
the
Yes,
actress name.
yes,
Yep.
yes,
I
yes,
agree.
yes.
Amazing. And Xvious Reaper said a young Michael B. Jordan from the
Oh
Chronicle
yeah,
era would have been fucking fire. I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah, but we got Killmonger out of it, which I
Yeah.
am happy with
He
that completely.
so there's this thing there, so the Hollywood Bowl is this like venue in LA, and they'll do this thing, outside concert venue, this thing where they'll play movies and have like a live orchestra over it and play the soundtrack. And Marvel did their first one like 2 weeks ago, and they did Black Panther, and Michael B. Jordan like introed it because like was very sad. It was like on 9/11, and also he like had a moment of silence for like Chadwick,
Yeah.
and it was very sad. But like we were far away, but this dude is so fucking buff. Like it's so crazy like how he like went from like skinny kid on The Wire to like
Yeah.
Killmonger, and like I was like I can see this dude's muscles from like 15 rows away. Like it's like so that makes me think of like the younger him could probably nail Miles, but now he's like too buff in the chest to like be
Yeah.
playing any like scrawny struggling like teenage kids
Yeah.
from the Bronx
Let him
or
be
Queens.
Creed. He's doing a fantastic
Yeah, yeah,
Creed.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Love it. I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Deke Lord writes, the dude from Stranger Things, Lucas Guy. I don't know his
Oh
real
yeah,
name,
yeah.
but he would be a good. Right. I saw him in Concrete Cowboy. I don't know if you've seen that movie with
Oh,
Idris
how is
Elba. It's
that?
on Netflix.
That's
Dude,
Netflix,
it's
right?
so
Yeah,
good. It's like a
yeah.
little simple story, but
Hmm.
I like obviously it's based on true story because these people do
Hmm.
exist. And obviously Idris Elba is kicking it. But the kid, the dramatic elements they added to it and the story of this kid, having this little journey, coming of age story.
Hmm.
It's beautifully done. It's beautifully
Yeah,
done. And the setting and this culture that they have about being
yeah,
cowboys in an era where cowboys don't exist anymore because we live in
yeah,
modern
yeah, yeah.
times. It's just a fascinating contrast. It was
Would you recommend it?
nice. Yeah, I do recommend
Oh,
it.
cool.
Like, at
I'll
least
watch
for
it
the
then.
acting. It's for the
Yeah, yeah,
acting, at least. The acting is
yeah. Mm.
phenomenal. Like, maybe you'll be like, the story's kind of simple, and it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I feel like the acting, especially from that kid, like when I saw that, I'm like, this kid can act. Like, I
Oh,
want to
fuck
see his
yeah.
next thing for sure. I
Oh,
would
yeah, yeah,
need to
yeah.
see his next thing. So,
Yeah, I'll
last
watch that.
question, and this comes from Miguel. Any current inspirations or one of your interactions with writers where you got a little starstruck, like you would never thought of you would collab with them or met them? Go ahead. All of them. Say all of
uh,
them.
yeah, all of them. They've all been fantastic. I mean, they all truly have been fantastic. I think
Yeah.
it's a combination of I think it's not necessarily of being super starstruck, but like being in the She-Hulk room with Jessica Gao, now my BFF. Shout out to my homie. Is that she wrote Pickle Rick, which is like probably like it's like the monorail of like Rick and Morty. It's like
Yeah.
probably like the best episode, and like someone that captures everything about it. So like working with her and like having her begrudgingly become like my mentor, and like now we hang out and like we're actual friends and stuff, and like getting all the great advice that she's given me and stuff, and like just having that connection is so great. Like I didn't expect it going. I mean, she was always very cool, but like I never thought going in that like my boss would become like someone that's actually my real friend, where like we hang out pretty consistently, and like
Yeah.
we both lived together so we obviously were both in LA, but we both lived in K-Town. We lived like 2 blocks away, and like she would drop off like food and like desserts and stuff during pandemic, and like just having that connection was great. And then like just being in like the Rick and Morty room proper, when I was like, oh shit, like this, did they did they call the right guy? Like, did they mean to send me the Zoom link to my email address? Like, this is so weird and surreal because like
Yeah.
I wrote for like the first 6 months, for the first like 2 months of that show. I was back home in North Carolina visiting my parents. So like I'm literally like in my childhood room, like pitching jokes for like what Rick or Morty could do or some or whatever. Like in like the same room where like I was watching this stuff when I'd come home
Yeah.
for like from like college and shit. It was very surreal and very, very cool. And like all of those people, like, and not even just the showrunners and stuff, like everyone in the room has always been like, they've always put like, it's like that quote, like that Bruce Lee quote about like you fill the cup up with water and then you toss it out, and like the little drops of water that drip down the bottom is the most important stuff. And like the idea is that you fill that back up with those little drops and toss it out again, and like the most important stuff still falls to the bottom. And like that's how it's been
Shapeless
with
like
like with
water. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like
I
that's
used
been
okay. I said that because I used that the short film, the documentary that I made.
mhm.
The basis of it is the quote from Bruce Lee. I
Oh,
pulled the
dope.
interview because part
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
philosophy of the rapper is based on
yeah.
being shapeless like water.
Oh, that's
So
dope. Yeah,
yeah,
that's clean. Yeah, see,
so I
this
love
is
that.
why
It's a great
this is
quote,
all that
bro.
we did in film school. People, this is a peek behind the curtain. Like this is all that
Yeah,
we did for like 3.5 years. It was great.
yeah,
But yeah,
that's
like
great.
they've all like the village. It's like it's all a village like rising the tide. It's like it's all been really cool and very kind of fucking surreal to be like, oh, this is where like the thing that I wanted to do. I'm doing, and I'm very lucky to be doing it.
Okay, so the last question, because this is a good one. Before I park my car, favorite comic, favorite book, favorite storyline in a series, and favorite movie. So I'm gonna leave it up there so you can
Yeah, so think yeah,
take
but so
goes.
favorite from the jump, favorite comic book movie. I think Black Panther. I think it's got to be Black Panther, and not
Okay.
just culturally, but like I love Ryan Coogler. Like I remember. I don't know if we saw Fruitvale together, but
Mhm.
I remember going to see that and like just bawling my eyes out. And that's a
Yeah.
through line for every single time I see a Coogler movie. Like Creed, bawled my eyes out. Fucking Black Panther is the first comic book movie that ever made me cry when like when um when Killmonger's character takes the heart-shaped herb and like he has that scene with his dad
Yeah.
and Sterling K. Brown, and like he goes from a
Oh
kid
yeah, that's
and his
such a
dad's
great
like,
scene.
you ain't
Yeah.
gonna cry for me, and he's like, no more tears, and like there's a match cut and then it's like adult Michael B. I was like, that's fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
That's my favorite comic. I mean, my favorite comic book movie. My favorite like comic. I will say, oh, this is tough too. I'll say, s- I'm going to say a tie between Invincible and Saga. Like I fucking loved Invincible when I first got it.
Ooh,
Like I
yeah.
used to deliver Chinese deliver food for this Chinese restaurant, and
Mhm.
right next door was a comic book shop, and I was like 19, 20. So when I got my tips, I'd go immediately spend it all on comic books. And the first thing that I ever remember getting was like the trade paperbacks for like Invincible. It was called like All in the Family. All of them was like were based over like sitcoms from stuff. And like
Yeah, yeah.
I loved that series. And I remember reading it and being like, oh, this would be a great cartoon. And now like 15 years later,
It
it's a
is. Yeah.
fantastic cartoon. And
Fantastic
like,
cartoon.
yeah,
So good. So good. Yeah.
and I love Saga because it's so big and it's like it has the energy of Star Wars as far as like these are people that have TV heads and they're just like, this is all the race. There's a talking otter race. They're super cute. Like it's a super fun series. So I think that would be my favorite comic. And that would be my favorite book. Will be with that, and favorite storyline. Ooh, I want to say there was a Thor run a couple of years back where him or like basically it's like old man King Thor, our like modern current time Thor, and like young brash Thor all have to team up to fight this character called Gore the God Butcher. I think it's called Eric. I think Eric Rashad or Rebecca. I can't remember his name. People reading this Google his name because I know that I'm not remember his name, but like
Mhm.
fantastic art, fantastic story. But like it has like I think when people think of like Marvel and DC is usually like these are where the gods hang out, and like Marvel is like these are like normal people that just happen to have fantastical powers, so it's easier in. But what I liked about that Thor run is that like it's Thor is a god, and very rarely do I think you see like god level characters get to have those big slug out fights in Marvel. So like it's this really cool like fight where it's like all the three different Thors fighting this character called God Butcher, and like it's one of those things where like it feels like a battle of the gods where like you can't comprehend how big it is, where like Thor, one like young Thor gets punched and like he flies across the solar system into a black hole, into like a sun, and comes out the other side, and
Nice,
like
nice.
like it's all this, like it feels like a battle of the gods where like they're throwing fucking moons at each other. It's
Yeah.
so gigantic and bombastic, and because for me anyway, like I don't see that often happen in Marvel. It feels like, oh wow, this is what it's like seeing old gods fight and like have like a titanic fight over, like sometimes you'll read comics, like you'll read like those comics, you're like, oh, this was Gorthar or Black Sex, he would spend his free time wrestling black holes. You're like, that doesn't make, how did I comprehend that? And then actually
Yeah.
seeing it, you're like, oh fuck, this is cool as shit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
track down whatever that, what I think it's like Thor, just Google like Thor God Butcher Run. That's probably like one of my favorite current series outside of obviously Kelly Thompson's Black Widow. You gotta check it out. That's one of my favorite books. Read.
Awesome. Please write for Saga. They need to come back. There you go. So
Yeah,
you have your next goal. Thanks to me.
That's all you got to do. You just got to speak it into existence.
Exactly. Yes, Saga. Heart emoji. Okay, man. It's been 2 hours and a half. I think we covered a lot of bases here. We need to have a follow-up episode where we just shoot the shit and talk about movies.
Yeah, man.
though.
Have me back. It's so good
we
because
need
I
to
haven't
do
seen
that.
you since we have not hung out since obviously we graduated. So like,
Yeah.
it was good talking, dude. Thanks for hitting me
Yeah,
up.
man. Of course. If you want to plug anything, go ahead and plug all the things that you want to plug. Go nuts, man.
Oh yeah, sure. Check out Yay for Zig. If you have Twitter or Instagram, that's where I'd be at. If you're into hearing like me yell about other nerd shit, I have 2 podcasts. One's called The Dark Weeb. Me and my homie Birdie Reed. We just talk with other people of color about nerd shit, comic books, manga, video games, whatever. It's just a fun safe space to have like other black and brown people come on and like talk about their interests that is sort of like genre based or just nerd based. And it's really fun. Also, another podcast called X-Ray Vision with Jason Concepcion. We do deep dives on nerd shit. We just did the first 3 episodes of Star Wars Visions. Before that, we did.
By the way, good, bad?
Oh, it's so fucking good, dude. It's so fucking clean. It's tight. You got to watch that shit.
Okay.
And if you're into comic books, which I'm assuming you are because you're watching this, check out Amazing Spider-Man starting with number 75. That's when like all the new crop of writers came on for that. We made some really fun stuff. We had a really fun book. And actually, this month, at the end of this month, I think 29th, Miles Morales number 30, man. I got my second short in that, so read it. It's fun. It's a
nice, man.
very fun time.
I'm gonna pick it up on my local comic book store then.
Oh, dope. Yeah.
Awesome. Where you guys, you can find me here, CINE MÁS Podcast, where I interview people, I talk about movies, I do whatever the hell they want because it's my damn podcast. I also collab in the Movie Guy podcast, where Tuesdays and Thursdays we just talk about the stuff that we saw over the weekend. And currently, since we're watching What If, and probably we're going to talk about Star Wars Visions either tomorrow or on Tuesday, you're going to see me talking about that. Also, thanks to the lovely people at 15 Bridgeport, which were asking me questions and we're hanging out in the chat. Thank you for all your questions, guys. I really appreciate with all my heart the little space that you gave me to talk about shit. Because I'm always the elitist A24 guy in a room full of nerds. I always have to be that guy because when no one else is, so I have to always be that. Even though I like the shit too, I'd be like, nah, man, that Marvel movie was trash. You should see The Green Knight. Please, that's high art, sir. So I appreciate XV Peachport for being here. I'm usually there with the guys at the After School Club, which they were on today. They talked about the latest What If episode, and they did talk about Star Wars Visions, but I told them I was doing this, so I haven't seen either of them, but I'll check them. I guess before I go to sleep, I'll watch probably What If. And I am also in Cine Nerds, where we talk about more cultured stuff. Last week we talked about Malignant, which was weird-ass movie, hard to define. I'm still debating it on my head sometimes. And we talked about the first episode of Scenes from a Marriage, which stars Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain, which is a remake from Ingmar Bergman's original Scenes from a Marriage. Beyond that, just Google me and Google Cody, because he has short films. He has stuff he's done. I have short films. I've done stuff. And I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you didn't see it live, go check it on Spotify, on Apple, iTunes, whatever. I don't know. Apple Podcasts. You can see it on Apple Podcast, Anchor. I'm all on those places because I learned how to do it on my own. I'm a big boy. And nothing. I hope you had a great and wonderful evening. And before I go, Miguel says you're our elitist, and I love you for that. And I am, but I appreciate you guys. I hope everyone had a wonderful night, and have a good one.